Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to part 4 of What If I Was Reincarnated into the Naruto World with the Skyrim System. Let the tale begin. Chapter 92, Mocking an Old Lady. Koushin decided to use reverse psychology on the old woman. He walked up to Chio, looking down at her with a mocking expression. As usual, old people, when everything turns into a spiral, they just blame themselves and take the easy way out. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, and he reached out to stop Koushin. Hey, what are you? Koushin swatted Naruto's hand away without even looking at him. He continued to stare down at Chio, his voice dripping with disdain. You want to die after all the mess you caused? Of course, you're too weak to even stand up and fix your mistakes. You've lost your will to live? How about you admit that you're too lazy to even own your mistakes? Chio's eyes flashed with anger as she struggled to her feet, grabbing Koushin's collar with surprising strength. Brat! I have survived 3 ninja wars. Do you know who you're talking to? A failure, who else? Koushin smirked, his eyes locked on hers, unflinching. Chio's face reddened with fury, her grip tightening on Koushin's collar. How dare you, you insolent child! I've given my life to Suna and its people, and you have the audacity to call me a failure? Koushin held her gaze, his voice calm and steady. Yes, because that's what you are right now. You're giving up on Sasori and Gaara, on everyone who still needs you. You're choosing to wallow in self-pity instead of fighting for them, for your village. Tears welled up in Chio's eyes, her voice wavering as she tried to maintain her anger. What do you expect me to do? I'm old, I'm weak, and I've failed everyone I love. Koushin smirked, putting the final nail in the coffin. How about starting with owning your mistakes, standing by your village to work harder, and saving Gaara and Sasori? Only after that, if you still want to, you can go and die. But before that, you are not allowed to, not if you're as awesome as you claim yourself to be. Chio stared at Koushin, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, she seemed to be at a loss for words. Then, something flickered in her eyes, a spark of determination that hadn't been there before. She released her grip on Koushin's collar and took a step back, her voice shaking but resolute. You're right. I can't just give up, not now. I owe it to my village, to Gaara, and to Sasori, to keep fighting. Naruto, who had been watching the exchange with a mix of fear and awe, let out a sigh of relief. I knew you could do it, Chiyoba-sama. We'll all work together to save Gaara and Sasori. Kakashi nodded in agreement, his newly restored eyes still tender but functional. We'll need to come up with a plan, though. The Akatsuki won't be easy to track down, and they'll be expecting us to try. Hinata, her face determined, added, but we have a better understanding of their abilities now, and we know what they're after. That gives us an advantage. Koushin glanced around at his teammates, his expression serious. We should return to Suna for now and notify them that Gaara won't be returning just yet. Then we can communicate with the other villages and come up with a plan. But for now, there's not much we can do other than share the information we've gathered. The others nodded in agreement, and they began making their way out of the cavern. As they walked, Naruto's mind raced, trying to think of a way to save Gaara and bring him back to the village. They didn't have to wait long for Team Asuma to arrive. Shikamaru, Eno, and Choji appeared, their faces etched with worry and concern. What happened? Shikamaru asked, his eyes scanning the group for any signs of injury. Is everyone okay? Naruto hesitated for a moment, trying to find the right words. Gaara, he's been taken by the Akatsuki. They're using him and Sasori somehow. We need to find a way to save them both. Eno's eyes widened in shock, and she exchanged worried glances with her teammates. Choji's fists clenched, and he spoke up, his voice filled with determination. We won't let them get away with this. We'll bring Gaara back. Shikamaru nodded, his mind already working on a strategy. We need to inform the other villages and work together. The Akatsuki won't be easy to track down, but we can't give up. As the group made their way back to Suna, Chio walked alongside Koushin, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Koushin. Your words. They were harsh, but they were what I needed to hear. I won't give up on Gaara and Sasori. I'll do everything I can to save them." Koushin couldn't help but smirk at Chio's words, feeling a twinge of pride at having helped her find her resolve. However, he wasn't one for emotional displays, especially with anyone other than Eno, his pumpkin. "I was just making fun of an old woman," Koushin said nonchalantly, shrugging off Chio's gratitude. "I don't know what you mean." With that, he strode over to Eno, who had been watching the entire exchange with a mix of amusement and concern. Eno raised an eyebrow as Koushin approached, but she couldn't suppress a smile as he took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "So, pumpkin," Koushin teased, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Were you worried about me while I was giving Chiyo-sama a piece of my mind?" Eno rolled her eyes at his playful tone, but her smile remained. "Worried? Please, I know you can handle yourself, even against a fierce old lady." After they arrived at the sand village, Chio notified Raza and the others about Gaara's desertion. Naruto and his friends were from Konoha, after all, and their words would always be taken with suspicion. It was better to let Chio handle it. Koushin, at this time, was with Kakashi, who was sitting on the rooftop of a building, watching the moon. He wasn't in his usual mood but looked depressed and lost. Koushin went to sit next to him, saying nothing. He knew Kakashi needed a friend, and when he wanted to, he would speak. Chapter 93, Kakashi's Story. It took almost an hour before Kakashi began to tell his story. "You know, Koushin, I wasn't always the person you see now. I used to be obnoxious, prideful, and serious about the rules," he began, a tinge of bitterness in his voice. "I thought I was better than everyone else because I was a prodigy. I believed that following the rules was the only way to be a true ninja." Koushin listened quietly, knowing that his sensei needed to get this off his chest. Kakashi continued, his voice growing softer. "My father, Tsukumo Hatake, was known as the White Fang of Konoha. He was a legendary ninja, but he chose to save the lives of his comrades rather than complete a mission, and the village shunned him for it. My father couldn't handle the shame and he took his own life." Koushin's heart ached for his sensei as he heard the pain in Kakashi's voice. He remained silent, allowing Kakashi to continue at his own pace. "I was only a child when that happened, and it left a mark on me," Kakashi admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I vowed that I would never make the same mistake as my father. I would be the perfect ninja, following every rule and never failing a mission." His fists clenched as he recalled those days. "I was put on a team with Rin Noura and Obito Uchiha, and our sensei was Minato Namikaze, the future fourth Hokage. Rin was kind and gentle, while Obito was always late and disorganized. I couldn't understand why Minato-sensei put up with him." Kakashi sighed, his voice heavy with regret. "I was blinded by my own pride, and it took a terrible tragedy for me to see the error of my ways. During a mission, Obito saved my life by pushing me out of the way of a falling boulder. He was trapped, and there was no way to save him." Tears welled up in Kakashi's eyes as he relived the memory. "Before he died, Obito gave me his Sharingan as a gift. He told me that he finally understood what it meant to be a true ninja, that protecting your friends was more important than any mission." Koushin's eyes widened as he listened to the heartbreaking story. He had never known the depths of Kakashi's pain and loss. Kakashi's voice wavered as he continued. "I promised Obito that I would protect Rin, but I failed. During a mission, Rin was taken hostage by enemy ninja who implanted a tailed beast within her. She begged me to kill her, to prevent the beast from being unleashed on our village." Koushin listened intently, seeing the pain etched on Kakashi's face as he recounted the tragic tale. "What did you do?" he asked softly, his heart aching for his sensei. Kakashi took a deep breath, the pain of the memory still raw even after all these years. I did what she asked. I killed her with the very Sharingan that Obito had given me to protect her. I couldn't find any other way. I had failed her and Obito. Tears began to stream down Kakashi's face, his voice barely a whisper. I've carried the weight of that failure with me ever since. I thought I could atone for it by becoming a better ninja, by protecting my comrades and my village. But now, seeing Obito alive and a part of the Akatsuki, I feel like I've failed all over again. Koushin placed a comforting hand on Kakashi's shoulder, his voice filled with empathy. Kakashi-sensei, you did what you had to do. It wasn't your fault. Sometimes, we're forced to make difficult choices, but that doesn't mean we failed. Kakashi shook his head, his voice thick with emotion. I appreciate your words, Koushin, but I can't help but feel responsible. If only I had been stronger, smarter, maybe I could have saved Rin without resorting to such drastic measures. Koushin sighed, understanding the guilt that weighed down on his sensei. Kakashi-sensei, we can't change the past. All we can do is learn from it and try to become better. You've already done so much for your village and your comrades. Don't let this define you. Kakashi looked at Koushin, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Koushin. I'll do my best to keep moving forward, but I don't think I'll ever be able to completely let go of my past. Koushin nodded, his expression serious. That's okay, Kakashi-sensei. We all have our demons to face. But I know you're strong enough to overcome them. They sat in silence for a while, the moon casting a pale glow over the village below. Kakashi's thoughts drifted to Obito, wondering what could have driven his former friend to join the Akatsuki and what role he played in their plans. Kakashi wiped his eyes, his voice growing stronger as he continued. You know, Obito wasn't always like this. He was a kind-hearted and determined young ninja. He always had a smile on his face, even in the toughest situations. Koushin leaned in, eager to hear more about the man Obito had once been. What was he like as a teammate? Kakashi chuckled, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He was a bit of a goofball, to be honest. Always late to training and meetings, but he never gave up, no matter how difficult things got. Rin and we used to tease him about it, but he never let it get to him. Koushin smiled, imagining a young Obito, full of life and laughter. It sounds like you guys were close. Kakashi nodded, his smile turning wistful. We were. Rin, Obito, and we were like family. Rin was the one who kept us together, always looking out for both of us. She was kind and gentle, but strong in her own way. I really admired her. Koushin could see the love Kakashi still held for his fallen comrades, and his heart ached for the pain his sensei had been carrying for so long. What was your favorite memory of Rin? Kakashi paused, a faraway look in his eyes as he recalled the past. There was this one time, after a particularly difficult mission, that we found ourselves near a field of wildflowers. Rin loved flowers, you see. She insisted that we stop and rest there for a while. A soft smile played on Kakashi's lips as he continued. We spent the entire afternoon in that field, just talking and laughing together. Obito tried to make flower crowns for us, but he was terrible at it. Rin had to show him how to do it properly. Koushin laughed along with Kakashi, picturing the scene in his mind. That sounds like a wonderful day. It was, Kakashi agreed, his voice heavy with nostalgia. We didn't know it then, but it would be one of our last days together as a team. I cherish that memory because it reminds me of a time when things were simpler, when we were just three friends trying to find our place in the world. Koushin nodded, understanding the significance of the memory. It's important to hold on to those moments, Kakashi-sensei. They remind us of who we are and where we came from. Kakashi sighed, his gaze still fixed on the moonlit sky. I know, but it's hard to remember the good times when there's so much pain and regret mixed in with them. Koushin squeezed Kakashi's shoulder reassuringly. It's okay to feel that pain, sensei. It's part of who you are. But you can't let it consume you. You have to keep moving forward, for the sake of those who can't. Kakashi looked at Koushin, his eyes filled with gratitude. You're wise beyond your years, Koushin. I'm grateful to have you as a student and a friend. Koushin smiled, touched by Kakashi's words. I'm grateful to have you as my sensei, too. We'll face whatever challenges come our way together, as a team. Kakashi nodded, his determination renewed. You're right. We'll save Gaara and Sasori, and we'll put an end to the Akatsuki's plans. I won't let my past hold me back any longer. As the night wore on, Kakashi continued to share stories of his time with Obito and Rin. The pain in his heart eased, if only a little, as he relived the happier moments of their time together. He told Koushin about the pranks Obito would pull on him, his face lighting up with a smile as he remembered their innocent mischief. Obito loved to surprise me with exploding tags, he said, chuckling at the memory. I was always on my toes, never knowing when he'd strike. Koushin laughed, imagining the young Kakashi constantly trying to outsmart Obito. It sounds like you two were always trying to one-up each other. Kakashi nodded, his eyes filled with warmth. We were, but it was always in good fun. Obito had a way of making even the most serious situations lighthearted. As the conversation shifted to Rin, Kakashi's voice softened. Rin was an amazing medic mean. She saved our lives countless times, often at great risk to herself. She was selfless and brave, always putting the needs of others before her own. Koushin's eyes widened, impressed by Rin's dedication to her friends and her village. She sounds like an incredible person, Kakashi-sensei. She was, Kakashi agreed, his voice heavy with emotion. I'm proud to have known her and called her a friend. The two sat in silence for a moment, the memories of the past swirling around them like leaves caught in the wind. Koushin hesitated, then asked, Kakashi-sensei, if you could say something to Obito and Rin right now, what would it be? Kakashi considered the question, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I would tell them that I'm sorry. That I wish I could have done more to protect them, to save them from their fates. I would tell them that I love them, and that I'll never forget them. Koushin nodded, his own eyes shining with empathy. I think they would be proud of you, Kakashi-sensei. They would want you to keep moving forward, to keep living your life. Kakashi looked at Koushin, the gratitude in his eyes unmistakable. Thank you, Koushin. Your support means more to me than you'll ever know. As the moon began to sink below the horizon, the first light of dawn creeping into the sky, Kakashi and Koushin continued to talk. They spoke of the past and the future, their voices filled with determination and hope. Chapter 94, No Lollygagging. Kakashi's team, along with Karen and Team Asuma, walked through the gates of Konoha, their mission in the Sand Village complete. With Karen's healing abilities, they were able to save Raza and Kankuro, but the village had suffered the loss of their tailed beast and one of their strongest shinobi. The Sand Village was left to cope with the burden of their new reality. The weary group of shinobi trudged into Konoha, their spirits dampened by the recent events in the Sand Village. With Gaara gone, the village had to come to terms with the loss of not just their tailed beast, but a skilled ninja who was expected to become the next Kazekage. As they crossed the threshold into the village, Koushin and his teammates couldn't help but feel a sense of relief at being home. It had been a long and difficult mission, and the familiarity of their surroundings brought a measure of comfort. Kotetsu and Izumo, the eternal gate guards, spotted Koushin and approached him, grinning. Koushin, no lollygagging, they teased before bursting into laughter. However, their laughter died abruptly as they noticed Kakashi's face. The sight of the normally composed and stoic man appearing so worn and haunted unsettled them. Their eyes widened as they took in Kakashi's now identical eyes. The Sharingan, his trademark, was gone. They glanced at each other, then simultaneously pinched each other's arms, as if to confirm that they weren't dreaming. What could have happened on the mission to cause Kakashi to lose his Sharingan? Kakashi, sensing their confusion and concern, offered a weary smile. It's a long story, Kotetsu, Izumo. We'll fill you in later. He didn't want to relive the events of the mission just yet, he needed time to process and come to terms with the loss of his Sharingan. Kotetsu and Izumo exchanged worried glances but nodded in understanding. All right, Kakashi-san. We'll be here if you need to talk, Izumo said, trying to offer some comfort. The group continued through the village, each lost in their own thoughts. Naruto, feeling the weight of his own failure to save Gaara, clenched his fists in determination. "I won't let this happen again," he vowed under his breath, determined to grow stronger and protect his friends. Hinata, who had been quietly walking beside him, placed a gentle hand on his arm. "We'll get through this together, Naruto-kun. We just need to keep moving forward and do our best." Naruto turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Hinata. I don't know what I'd do without you." The teams arrived at the Hokage's office, the air heavy with anticipation. As they entered, Tsunade and Shizen looked up, their eyes immediately drawn to Kakashi's face. They exchanged shocked glances upon seeing the change in his eyes, but didn't have time to question it before Kakashi began to report on the mission. "During our mission to track down Gaara, we followed the lead Kankuro provided about Sasori of the Desert, one of the Akatsuki's puppet masters. As we made our way, we were confronted by reanimated corpses of the Edo Tensei," Kakashi explained, his voice steady and calm. "Orochimaru was behind it," he continued. "He summoned 3 Uchiha, all of whom I recognized from the Konoha police force. Koushin and others managed to seal them away and we continued our pursuit." As Kakashi detailed their journey, Tsunade and Shizen listened intently, their expressions growing more somber with each word. "Upon arriving at the cave, we met up with Team Asuma, and together we broke the seal guarding the entrance," Kakashi continued. "Inside, we found Deidara, Sasori, and Gaara waiting for us." Tsunade frowned, her concern growing. "And Gaara? What happened to him?" Kakashi hesitated, his voice strained as he explained. Gaara looked somber, but he eventually declared that he had joined the Akatsuki and had no intention of returning to the Sand Village. He said that he had been free from the One Tail, and from then on, he was free. A heavy silence filled the room as Tsunade and Shizen processed the information. It was hard to imagine Gaara, who had fought so hard to protect his village and friends, choosing to join the enemy. Before the battle began, Kakashi continued, his voice tinged with pain. "A masked man appeared out of nowhere and attacked me, removing my Sharingan. He later revealed that the Sharingan was his, confirming his identity as Obito Uchiha." Tsunade's eyes widened in shock, and she slammed her fist on the desk. "Obito? How is that possible?" Kakashi could only shake his head. "I don't know, but it was him. I'm certain of it." Shizen, still reeling from the revelation, turned her attention to Kakashi's eyes. "What happened to your Sharingan? Can it be replaced?" Koushin stepped forward, explaining his role in the events. "I used a rare healing technique I've learned thanks to my summons, one that I can only use once every 3 years. I was able to heal Kakashi-sensei's eye, but the Sharingan is gone for good." Tsunade looked at Koushin with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "Thank you, Koushin. You did well." Koushin bowed his head, humbled by her praise. "I only did what I could, Lady Tsunade." Tsunade's annoyance bubbled to the surface as she reached for a bottle of sake from a drawer in her desk. Uncorking the bottle, she took a generous swig, her eyes narrowing as she pondered the implications of the events they had just recounted. "If they can remove a tailed beast without killing the host, that means the Akatsuki are even more dangerous than we anticipated," she muttered, taking another swig of the sake. "I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If it's not the same for everyone, they may decide it's easier to kill the host and resurrect them using the Edo Tensei, causing even more chaos." She set the bottle down and looked directly at Kakashi, her brow furrowed in concern. "Why did you seal away the reanimated Uchiha instead of destroying them? And how did you come up with the idea?" Kakashi glanced at Koushin before answering. "It was Koushin's idea, actually." Koushin stepped forward, explaining his thought process. During the battle between the third Hokage and Orochimaru, Hiruzen used sealing techniques to immobilize and weaken the reanimated first and second Hokage. I thought that if we could use similar techniques, we might be able to seal away the reanimated Uchiha and prevent Orochimaru from using them again. Tsunade nodded, impressed by Koushin's quick thinking and resourcefulness. "That was a smart move, Koushin. Your ability to adapt and learn from past battles is a valuable asset. Koushin bowed his head in gratitude. Thank you, Lady Tsunade. I only did what I believed would be most effective in this situation. Chapter 95, Crucial Information. Tsunade turned her attention back to the group, her expression grave. We need to prepare for the possibility of more reanimations, and we must also figure out a way to counter the Akatsuki's ability to extract tailed beasts without killing the host. This is a dangerous development, and we must be ready to face it. Kakashi nodded, his determination clear. We'll do whatever it takes to protect the village and our comrades, Lady Tsunade. Tsunade looked at each of them, her eyes filled with pride and determination. I know you will. Now go get some rest. You've earned it. As the group left the Hokage's office, they couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and trepidation. They had completed their mission and saved the lives of Raza and Kankuro, but their failure to rescue Gaara weighed heavily on their minds. The revelation of Obito's survival and his role within the Akatsuki only added to their sense of unease. They knew that the battles ahead would be challenging, and they couldn't afford to falter. For now, though, they would take solace in the fact that they had returned home safely and would soon be reunited with their friends and loved ones. As the group made their way through the village, Koushin walked alongside Kakashi, curiosity gnawing at him. There was so much he didn't know, having been away for nearly 3 years. Before he had left, he had suggested to Tsunade that they get in touch with the other villages and warn them about the Akatsuki. He was eager to find out if his suggestion had been followed and if the villages were united in their efforts against the Akatsuki. Kakashi-sensei, Koushin began, trying to sound casual despite his curiosity. Before I left, I had suggested to Lady Tsunade that we reach out to the other villages about the Akatsuki. Did we manage to establish contact? Are the villages united against them? Kakashi nodded, his expression serious. Yes, we did. Lady Tsunade sent out envoys to the other villages, warning them about the Akatsuki and the threat they posed. Most of the villages agreed to work together, sharing information and resources to help combat the Akatsuki. Koushin sighed in relief, pleased that his suggestion had been followed. That's good to hear. We'll need to stand together if we're to have any chance of stopping them. Kakashi's expression darkened as he continued. Unfortunately, not all the villages were receptive to our message. Some have chosen to remain neutral, fearing the consequences of taking a stand against the Akatsuki. Others are more concerned with their own power struggles and internal disputes. Koushin frowned, disappointed but not entirely surprised by the news. I suppose that's to be expected. Village politics and rivalries run deep. Still, it's frustrating to know that we could be stronger if we were all united in our efforts. Kakashi nodded in agreement. It is, but we have to focus on working with those who are willing to stand with us. The bonds we've forged with the other villages will be crucial in the battles to come. Koushin looked thoughtful for a moment before asking another question that had been on his mind. What about the other Jinchuriki? Have we been able to locate and protect them? Kakashi sighed, his expression grim. We've managed to locate some of them and provide protection, but there are still others who remain hidden either by choice or by circumstance. We're doing our best to find them and offer our support, but it's a difficult task. Koushin nodded, understanding the challenges involved in locating and protecting the Jinchuriki. I can only imagine. I hope we can find them before the Akatsuki do. They walked in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts about the challenges they faced and the difficult road ahead. Finally, Koushin spoke up again, his curiosity piqued by another aspect of their situation. The sun was just starting to rise as Jariah made his way to the Hokage's office. A sense of urgency marked his steps, the normally jovial Toad Sage appearing unusually serious. Beside him, Sai, his new student, mirrored his master's gravity, an unusual departure from his usual aloof demeanor. Remember, Sai, Jariah began, his tone stern, information is a valuable weapon in our line of work. What we've discovered could tip the scales in our favor. Sai nodded, an earnest look on his face. Understood, Master Jariah. I'm ready to share everything we've found. Upon arriving at the Hokage's office, they found Tsunade waiting for them, along with Kakashi, Koushin, Naruto, Hinata, and Shin, Kakashi's new student who idolized his master. Even at first glance, it was clear Shin was striving to imitate Kakashi, from the headband covering his left eye to the aloof demeanor he tried to project. But now that Kakashi's eye was healed, it was no longer covered. Shin, though, still covered one of his eyes. Tsunade acknowledged their arrival with a nod. Jariah, Sai, thank you for coming so quickly. Let's get straight to the point. What information do you have? Jariah cleared his throat and began. Sai and I have been tracking Orochimaru's movements and contacts. Recently, we discovered a transaction between one of Orochimaru's spies and an unknown party. We suspect this party may be connected to the Akatsuki. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. Tsunade leaned forward, her eyes sharp. Did you manage to identify who this unknown party is? Jariah shook his head. No, we couldn't get close enough to identify them. But we believe they're meeting again soon, and we'd like to plan an ambush to learn more about Orochimaru and the Akatsuki's plans. Tsunade frowned thoughtfully, drumming her fingers against her desk. That's a risky move, Jariah. If things go wrong, we could tip them off. Sai, who had been observing the exchange silently, chose this moment to step forward, trying to mimic Jariah's confident air as he spoke. It is indeed a risk, Lady Tsunade, but with the information we could gain, the potential rewards could be invaluable. I believe we have a good chance of pulling this off. Tsunade turned her gaze to Sai, scrutinizing him for a moment before nodding. Very well. Let's plan this out, then. Chapter 96, Nakama Power. The group spent the next few hours strategizing, going over every possible scenario and planning their responses. Sai, despite his normally awkward demeanor, proved to be surprisingly adept at tactical planning, often agreeing with Jariah's points and occasionally suggesting innovative ideas of his own. The meeting was tense, filled with grave faces and the heavy weight of responsibility. Everyone understood that this mission had the potential to reveal vital information about the enemy, but also posed great risks. Naruto, feeling the weight of the situation, clenched his fists, his determined gaze fixed on the map spread out on the table. We have to do this, no matter the risk. We can't let them get away with their plans. As the morning sun peeked over the horizon, Konoha bustled with activity. The 5 teams, led by Jariah, were preparing to set out on a mission that could potentially turn the tide in their ongoing conflict with the Akatsuki. At the head of the group, Jariah surveyed the ninja under his command, his usually playful demeanor replaced by a sober gravity that reflected the seriousness of the situation. Team 3, led by Hyuga Iroha, stood tall and ready, composed of Sai, Shin, and Yu. Sai, always looking to emulate Jariah, mirrored his master's stern expression, appearing unusually focused. Shin, on the other hand, was trying to channel Kakashi's aloofness. His eye hidden behind his headband, he attempted to look nonchalant, though a hint of nervousness betrayed his composure. Jariah's gaze then moved to Team 7, Kakashi's squad. Kakashi stood at the forefront, his demeanor calm yet determined. Beside him were Koushin, Naruto, and Hinata. Naruto's face was a mask of determination, his blue eyes burning with resolve. Koushin seemed to draw from Kakashi's calm, looking composed despite the gravity of the mission. Hinata, though looking slightly nervous, stood tall, her resolve not to let her comrades down clear on her face. Team 8 was next. Led by Kurenai, the team comprised of Sakura, Kiba, and Shino. Sakura's brows were furrowed in concentration, her eyes glinting with determination. Kiba, with Akamaru at his side, looked confident, ready for action, while Shino, as always, kept his emotions hidden behind his dark glasses, his posture revealing nothing but readiness. Asuma's Team 10 consisted of Shikamaru, Choji, and Eno. Shikamaru looked as casual as ever, but his eyes held a keen sharpness that spoke of his readiness for the mission ahead. Choji was munching on his favorite chips, but his expression was serious, a change from his usual carefree self. Eno, ever the cute, looked focused and ready, her gaze steady on her darling, Koushin. Lastly, Team Guy stood energetic as ever, led by Guy himself. Neji appeared composed and prepared, his Byakugan eyes serious. Lee, mirroring his sensei's fervor, was practically bouncing on his heels in anticipation, while Tintin, ever the practical one, was checking her weapons one last time. Looking at the assembled shinobi, Jariah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They were a formidable force, each team unique in their abilities and strengths. He knew that whatever they would face at Canopy Bridge, they were prepared to meet it head-on. "All right," he began, addressing the group, "our mission is simple in its goal, but potentially complex in its execution. We will be ambushing the Canopy Bridge to intercept a meeting between one of Orochimaru's spies and an unknown party. Our primary objective is to capture them and extract as much information as possible." A collective nod of understanding rippled through the group. Each shinobi knew the importance of this mission. Information was crucial in this war, and this was an opportunity they couldn't afford to miss. "The operation will be carried out in 2 stages, Jariah continued, pointing to a detailed map of the bridge and its surrounding areas. "First, we'll surround the area, laying out a perimeter to prevent any escape. Second, once the meeting is underway, we'll close in, ensuring that neither party can flee without a fight. It is essential that we coordinate our actions and respond quickly to any changes in the situation." He shifted his gaze, making sure each shinobi understood their part. "Team Guy and Team 8, you will secure the perimeter. Your task is to prevent reinforcements from arriving and block escape routes. Team 10 and Team 3, you will be on standby, ready to provide support when we launch the attack. Lastly, Team 7, with me, will move in for the capture once the meeting begins." There was a heavy silence as each team took in their tasks, committing them to memory. The gravity of the mission hung over them, but there was no fear in their faces, only a steadfast resolve. "Remember, we move as one," Jariah stressed, "communication and coordination are vital. We cannot afford to act independently." "Any questions?" Shikamaru raised a hand. "How do we know when to move in for the capture? We don't want to jump the gun and scare them off before the meeting even starts." To Shikamaru's question, Sai walked forward, his posture rigidly straight in contrast to Jariah's relaxed stance. "I believe I have a solution to that," he said, his voice calm and composed. "Over the last 3 years, I have refined my ink techniques with Master Jariah. I can now create drawings that react and transform in response to specific signals." His words sparked a round of impressed murmurs amongst the group. Sai continued, presenting a small ink brush from his pouch. "I will inscribe a mark on each of us. When the signal is given, the mark will change shape. This will allow us to coordinate our actions seamlessly." As the group digested Sai's plan, Jariah chuckled, a warm and proud sound. "That's my boy, always thinking ahead. His dedication to improving his techniques is admirable." Sai, however, shook his head humbly. "The credit doesn't belong to me alone," he confessed, his eyes sliding over to meet Koushin's. "This idea was originally Koushin's." A murmur of surprise rippled through the group. Koushin, standing next to Kakashi, had a knowing smirk on his face. But he quickly replaced it with a modest shrug, saying, "I just thought it would be useful." Seeing the impressed glances directed at Koushin, Eno stepped forward, a proud smile on her face. "That's my boyfriend, always thinking 10 steps ahead." Koushin looked at her with a playful smirk, his eyes sparkling with affection. "How was that Pumpkin-chan?" he asked, the teasing nickname sending a wave of amusement through the group. "Your boyfriend is a genius, isn't he?" In response, Eno simply rolled her eyes, though her smile never faltered. As the group erupted into light-hearted laughter, Koushin allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. He had come up with the idea 3 years ago, right before he had left for training with Kakashi. It had been inspired by a Muggle story, Harry Potter, where they used a charm called Protean to link objects and allow them to change and sync. He thought if Sai could pull off something similar, it could be invaluable in the field. But Koushin wasn't finished yet. Just as Sai was about to start marking people, he halted him. "Wait, Sai," he called, drawing everyone's attention. "Mark everyone's back of the forearm with an X. Depending on the order, you can then change it." Brows furrowed in confusion, Shikamaru was the one to voice the question everyone had. "Why an X?" With an enigmatic smirk, Koushin only said, "Nakama power." Chapter 97, Rashi and Utakata's Wishes. Although they failed to understand what that phrase meant, they didn't care what the initial symbol looked like. After marking everyone, the teams dispersed to prepare for the mission. Each shinobi wore the inked X on their forearm, a silent symbol of their unity and resolve, the mark of Nakama. They knew the road ahead was fraught with peril, but with the strength of their bond, they were ready to face it together. The Canopy Bridge, located on the outskirts of the Land of Fire, was bathed in the golden hues of the late afternoon sun. Each shinobi, hidden in strategic positions, watched the area intently, their senses attuned to the slightest disturbance. The air was filled with a potent mix of tension and anticipation as they awaited the arrival of their targets. Team 3, led by Hyuga Iroha, concealed themselves within the dense foliage of the surrounding woods. Sai, his eyes focused and intent, had his ink brush at the ready, poised for action. Shin, doing his best to emulate Kakashi's nonchalant demeanor, nevertheless failed to mask his underlying excitement. Yu, quiet and watchful, blended seamlessly into the forest, her bright eyes scanning the environment. On the other side of the bridge, Team 7, led by Kakashi, was also in hiding. Naruto's eyes sparkled with determination, his fingers twitching in readiness. Hinata, her usually timid demeanor replaced by a steadfast resolve, readied herself for the mission. Kakashi, without his Sharingan, relied on his natural senses and years of experience, emanating calm and control despite the tense atmosphere. Further downstream, Team 8, led by Kurenai, maintained their positions. Sakura, her medical pouch securely fastened, was on alert, ready to provide immediate aid if needed. Kiba, with Akamaru at his side, sniffed the air periodically, his keen sense of smell searching for any sign of the enemy. Shino, as ever, remained inscrutable behind his sunglasses, but his insects were already on the move, hidden within the bark of the trees and the cracks in the ground. At the highest point overlooking the bridge, Team 10 held their position. Shikamaru, his eyes half closed, calculated their strategy, anticipating any potential issues. Chuji, despite munching on his chips, wore a serious expression, his eyes never leaving the bridge. Eno, focused and ready, maintained her connection to a bird that soared high above the area, her eyes reflecting its bird's-eye view of the entire vicinity. Lastly, Team Guy, located upstream from the bridge, exuded an air of intense focus. Niji's Byakugan was active, his eyes taking in every minute detail. Lee, though visibly eager, was controlled and still, his muscles tensed in anticipation. Tintin, meticulously checking her array of weapons one last time, wore a stern expression, reflecting her readiness. In the midst of all this, a seemingly innocuous frog, Jariah in his animal form, croaked leisurely on the edge of the bridge, appearing as nothing more than a part of the natural surroundings. Above him, a bird flew in a lazy circle, carrying a shrub in its beak. The shrub was actually Koushin, maintaining a hinge to blend in with the bird's cargo. These disguises, while simple, were effective, allowing them to observe the bridge without arousing suspicion. The silence was suddenly broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Instantly, each shinobi tensed, their focus zeroing in on the source of the sound. Out of the surrounding forest, two figures emerged, casually making their way toward the bridge. Their casual demeanors did nothing to ease the tension, rather, it only increased, tightening like a bowstring pulled to its limit. Jariah felt his heart drop at the sight of the two figures approaching. One was unmistakable Orochimaru, his form reflecting his newly acquired sage mode. The former comrade's vile experiments had led him to perverse heights of power, his transformation into something monstrous a chilling testament to his disregard for the natural order. Beside him, two figures seemed to be out of place. The first was Rashi, the Jinchuriki of the Four Tails. He was an older man, his body hardened by the strain of carrying a tailed beast within him. His eyes held a glint of suppressed anger, a testament to the life he was forced to live. The other was Utakata, the Six-Tails Jinchuriki, a young man whose sad eyes held a depth of experience that belied his years. Jiraiya's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. What was Orochimaru doing with two Jinchuriki? The Akatsuki were known to be hunting them down, yet here were two, casually strolling alongside one of Konoha's most notorious criminals. For a moment, Jariah considered calling off the mission. The addition of two Jinchuriki to the mix added a layer of complexity that their plans hadn't accounted for. It would undoubtedly make the mission far more dangerous. But the opportunity to find out what Orochimaru wanted from them was too valuable to pass up. With a burst of chakra, he willed Sai's ink marking to change, signaling standby to the rest of the teams. He hoped that the shinobi would maintain their positions and await his next instruction. They were in uncharted territory now, and it would take all of their combined skills and resources to navigate through it successfully. Meanwhile, high above the bridge, Koushin watched the unfolding situation with growing unease. Recognizing Rashi and Utakata, his mind began to race. In the original timeline, both of them had been captured by the Akatsuki and met tragic ends. It was shocking to see them here, walking freely with Orochimaru, of all people. His shock, however, quickly turned to suspicion. Why were they here? What did Orochimaru want with them? And most importantly, how did this change fit into the bigger picture? As Orochimaru, Rashi, and Utakata neared the bridge, their conversation drifted to the surrounding shinobi, their words catching their attention. Rashi, his gruff voice filled with uncertainty, asked, "Orochimaru, are the rumors true? The ones about the Akatsuki being able to remove the tailed beasts without killing their hosts?" Chapter 98, Tug of Heart. Orochimaru, his pale face breaking into a grin, turned to Rashi. "Oh, yes," he confirmed, his voice dripping with amusement. "We indeed have such a method. We extracted Shikaku from Gaara, the Jinchuriki of the One Tail, and he lived." Utakata, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up, his voice brimming with cautious hope. "So, there's a chance we could be free of our beasts?" Orochimaru chuckled darkly, his eyes glinting with cruel mirth. "Yes, there is," he said. "However, there's a small catch." The two Jinchuriki shared a look, their expressions filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. "What is it?" Rashi asked, his voice noticeably tenser. "The condition for this procedure," Orochimaru began, his grin widening, "is that you will have to join the Akatsuki. Gaara is a part of us now, and so should you if you want to free yourselves from your tailed beasts." As the implication of Orochimaru's words sank in, the two Jinchuriki were thrown into silence, their faces mirroring their inner turmoil. To gain their freedom from the tailed beasts that had dominated their lives, they would have to join an organization known for its ruthless, destructive agenda. Rashi, his face hardened by years of hardship, was the first to respond. "So, we trade one cage for another, is that it?" Orochimaru simply shrugged, as though unconcerned. "That's one way to look at it," he admitted, "but I think you'll find that the Akatsuki offer more freedom than you've ever known. It's not every day one gets an opportunity to change their fate, wouldn't you say?" Jariah, hidden in his frog form, felt his heart lurch at Orochimaru's proposal. The idea of two more Jinchuriki potentially joining the Akatsuki was a prospect that filled him with dread. He couldn't just sit back and watch them walk into the jaws of the enemy. Steeled by the sudden urgency of the situation, he was about to emerge from his disguise when Orochimaru's voice echoed through the quiet afternoon air. Finally making a move, "Jariah," he called out casually, his gaze directly on the innocuous frog by the bridge. Jariah froze, taken aback. His eyes widened in surprise, his throat tightening in shock. No one had ever detected him before while he was in this form. The silence was stifling, the air suddenly dense as though it carried the weight of the revelation. His mind was racing, attempting to process what had just transpired. Orochimaru's lips curled into a lazy smirk, his golden eyes gleaming with a perverse sort of delight. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize you, Jariah? He drawled. You've always been terrible at hiding your chakra. A beat of silence followed, the tension hanging heavy like a shroud. Finally, shaking off the shock, Jariah let his transformation fall. His figure expanded from the small frog to his usual towering form, his long white hair fluttering in the breeze. He stood tall, his face solemn as he met Orochimaru's smug gaze. Orochimaru, he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. I didn't come here to play games. Orochimaru chuckled, his amusement apparent. Then why are you here, Jariah? He asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. To try and convince me to come back to the village? To stop me from my experiments? Or maybe, to ask me to let these two go? He gestured towards Rashi and Utakata, who were watching the exchange with wide-eyed silence. Jiraiya's gaze hardened, his determination resolute. I'm here to stop you from taking advantage of them, he retorted, his voice laced with a protective edge. Orochimaru's laughter echoed across the area, loud and taunting, a chilling juxtaposition to the serene landscape. The sound sent a shiver down the spines of the hidden shinobi, his amusement resonating with a cold, unnerving quality. Taking advantage of Jinchuriki, he scoffed, the derision clear in his voice. You mean, like the villages do? Like you do? His tone was spiteful, each word carefully calculated to sting. The implication hung heavy in the air, a challenge thrown brazenly in Jiraiya's face. Rashi and Utakata flinched at Orochimaru's words, their faces hardening. The bitterness in their eyes was painfully clear, a tangible reminder of their shared, unfortunate plight. It was an undeniable fact that the Jinchuriki were regarded as weapons by their respective villages, their humanity overlooked in favor of the immense power they harbored. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed at Orochimaru's accusation. We don't take advantage of them, he countered, his voice firm, we protect them. Orochimaru laughed again, the sound even more jarring than before. Protect, he sneered. Is that what you call it, Jariah? How amusing. You protect them by imprisoning them in their own bodies, condemning them to a life of fear and loneliness. You treat them as weapons, not as human beings. And yet, you have the audacity to accuse me of taking advantage? The Sannin's words were sharp, calculated to incite the deepest of wounds. And they hit their mark, the impact evident in the stiffening of Jiraiya's stance. Rashi and Utakata, meanwhile, wore expressions of shock and resentment, their fists clenched at their sides. They had been reminded of a harsh truth, one that they had spent their lives struggling against. Orochimaru, clearly pleased with the discomfort he'd inflicted, continued his tirade. You see, Rashi, Utakata, the hidden villages might claim to protect you, but they only do so out of fear of the immense power you possess. You are tools to them, nothing more. The Akatsuki, however, we see you for what you truly are, individuals of incredible strength and potential. His golden eyes flickered with anticipation, a chillingly predatory glint. I won't sugarcoat it. Yes, you will have to work for us, Orochimaru admitted, his voice brimming with false sincerity. But consider this. Is it not better to ally yourself with those who value your strength, rather than with those who fear and resent it? He paused, allowing his words to sink in before he delivered the final blow. Gaara, the Jinchuriki of the One Tail, has already joined us. He's free from Shikaku, and he found his place within the Akatsuki. He found freedom. And so can you, if you choose to join us. His words hung in the air, their implications looming large over the bridge. To Rashi and Utakata, the offer held a dangerous allure. Freedom from their tailed beasts, from the burdens they had carried all their lives, it was a prospect too tempting to disregard outright. Chapter 99, Naruto is different. With a sly grin, Orochimaru's gaze shifted from Jariah to a specific section of the surrounding foliage where the members of Team 7 were concealed. The same goes for you too, Naruto-kun, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silence of the late afternoon. The smirk on his face broadened as he addressed the young shinobi directly. If you want that monster removed, you are welcome to join us. In his hiding place, Naruto stiffened, his cerulean eyes wide with shock. Orochimaru knew he was there. The realization sent a jolt of anxiety coursing through him. But more than that, it was the audacity of Orochimaru's proposition that hit him like a blow. Remove Kurama? Naruto's hand subconsciously moved to his stomach, over the seal that contained the kyuubi. Within him, he could sense Kurama's growing unrest at the suggestion. The fox's chakra bristled, its anger palpable to Naruto. He and the kyuubi had had a complicated relationship. Initially, Naruto saw the beast as a curse, a destructive force responsible for the hardships he'd endured. But over time, especially with Koushin's guidance, Naruto had learned to see past the beast's wrath, to recognize the pain that echoed his own. In his mind, Naruto reached out to Kurama. "You heard that?" he asked, his mental voice heavy with worry. An irritated huff echoed in his mind as Kurama responded, "How could I not, brat? That slippery snake, thinking he can just remove me as if I'm some malignant tumor." There was indignation in Kurama's voice, and a hint of pain that Naruto had come to associate with the beast's long history of being used as a weapon, of being seen as nothing more than a monster. A pang of empathy gripped Naruto, his heart aching for his companion. Orochimaru's offer, though presented as a chance for freedom, felt more like a death sentence to Naruto. The thought of removing Kurama, not just the seal but the fox himself, it was unthinkable. He and Kurama were connected, their fates intertwined in ways that Naruto was just beginning to understand. "Hey, Kurama," Naruto said, his mental voice filled with resolve. "You're not a monster to me. Not anymore. You're a friend." A pause followed, the silence stretching. Then, in a softer tone, one Naruto had rarely heard, Kurama replied, "That means a lot, Naruto." In the physical world, Naruto clenched his fist, determination burning in his eyes. "Orochimaru," he called out, stepping out from his hiding spot, his presence causing a ripple of surprise among the other hidden shinobi. "I'm not interested in your offer." Orochimaru's smirk didn't falter. "Oh, is that so?" he asked, his voice filled with mockery. "You're okay with remaining a prisoner for the rest of your life, then?" "I'm not a prisoner," Naruto retorted, his voice firm. "And neither is Kyuubi. We're partners. Friends." The proclamation echoed across the bridge, causing a range of reactions among those who heard it. Orochimaru's smirk widened, his gaze filled with perverse amusement. "A Jinchuriki and his beast, friends? How quaint," he mocked. "But ask yourself, Naruto-kun, how does your friend feel about being caged inside you?" Seeing the ripple of impact Naruto's words had on Rashi and Utakata, Orochimaru swiftly moved to disrupt the growing sentimentality. He couldn't afford to let Naruto's idealistic notions sway the two Jinchuriki. "Naruto-kun," he began, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your naivety truly knows no bounds." Naruto's gaze hardened at the insult, but Orochimaru continued, completely undeterred. "Do you remember, Naruto?" he asked, his voice dropping to a more somber tone. "Do you remember the loneliness? The rejection? The fear in the eyes of those who should have been your neighbors, your friends?" Naruto's hands clenched into fists at his sides, memories of a painful childhood flooding his mind. His eyes stung, not from the force of Orochimaru's words, but from the bitter truth they held. Orochimaru glanced at Rashi and Utakata, ensuring that they were following his line of thought. He saw the look of dawning understanding in their eyes, the hint of sympathy, and it spurred him on. "You are shunned, Naruto," he continued, his voice growing louder, more impassioned. "Marked as a pariah, not for any crime you committed, not for any wrong you did, but for the beast they chose to seal inside you." The words hit Naruto like a physical blow, forcing him to acknowledge the bitter truth in them. He had been marked by the village, shunned and isolated because of the nine tails sealed inside him. Orochimaru's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he continued. "And why? Why did they do it, Naruto? Why were you, a mere child, chosen for such a burdensome fate?" Naruto had no answer, his cerulean eyes filled with a swirl of emotions. He was waiting, knowing that Orochimaru would answer his own question. Because they needed a weapon, Naruto, Orochimaru said, his voice ringing with conviction. A tool they could wield against their enemies. They didn't care about you, about your happiness, your dreams. To them, you were nothing more than a container for the Nine Tails. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest, his throat tightened with unshed tears. He hated it, but he couldn't deny the truth in Orochimaru's words. That's your village, Naruto, Orochimaru finished, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. That's Konoha. A village that values power above its people. That sees Jinchuriki as tools rather than humans. The silence that followed Orochimaru's words was heavy, oppressive. Naruto's mind was spinning, his heart aching with the harsh truth of his words. He wanted to refute him, to defend Konoha, but he knew that Orochimaru's words held a kernel of truth. Meanwhile, Rashi and Utakata exchanged a glance, their faces reflecting their internal turmoil. They understood Naruto's pain, the loneliness and resentment that came with being a Jinchuriki. They, too, had experienced similar treatment, living as outcasts in their own villages. In that moment, Orochimaru's offer seemed less of an entrapment and more of a tempting proposition. The chance to break free from the shackles of their tailed beasts, to take control of their own destinies, it was a prospect that was hard to ignore. The silence that hung over the bridge was shattered by the sudden rustle of leaves. From the mouth of the small bird Jariah had been holding, a tiny shrub fell, quickly transforming midair into Koushin. Landing gracefully next to Naruto, Koushin placed a comforting hand on his younger brother's shoulder, his eyes meeting Orochimaru's with a determined grin. Those tactics might work on others, Orochimaru-san, Koushin declared, his voice resonating with an unwavering resolve. But Naruto was never alone. He had an amazing brother like me by his side, who always believed in him, who knew his worth beyond the beast inside him. Chapter 100, Orochimaru vs. All. Orochimaru's grin faltered at Koushin's words, his golden eyes narrowing in displeasure. This was not the response he had anticipated. Koushin's gaze didn't waver as he continued, his tone growing firmer, and with Tsunade-sama's arrival, Konoha has changed. It's no longer a village that sees its Jinchuriki as mere tools. It values them for who they are, not for the power they possess. His words had an immediate effect on Naruto, the turmoil in his cerulean eyes diminishing somewhat. He turned to look at Koushin, the corner of his lips curving upwards in a small but grateful smile. And let's not forget Killer Bee of Kumo, Koushin added, his voice filled with conviction. He too is happy with who he is, despite being a Jinchuriki. He has embraced his power, and he's loved and respected by his village for it. Orochimaru's gaze hardened at Koushin's words, his fingers twitching subtly in irritation. He hadn't expected such a staunch defense, nor had he anticipated Koushin's ability to bolster the spirits of his allies. But he wasn't about to back down. The silence that hung over the bridge was shattered by the sudden rustle of leaves. From the mouth of the small bird Jariah had been holding, a tiny shrub fell, quickly transforming midair into Koushin. Landing gracefully next to Naruto, Koushin placed a comforting hand on his younger brother's shoulder, his eyes meeting Orochimaru's with a determined grin. Those tactics might work on others, Orochimaru, Koushin declared, his voice resonating with an unwavering resolve. But Naruto was never alone. He had an amazing brother like me by his side, who always believed in him, who knew his worth beyond the beast inside him. Orochimaru's grin faltered at Koushin's words, his golden eyes narrowing in displeasure. This was not the response he had anticipated. Koushin's gaze didn't waver as he continued, his tone growing firmer, and with Tsunade-sama's arrival, Konoha has changed. It's no longer a village that sees its Jinchuriki as mere tools. It values them for who they are, not for the power they possess. His words had an immediate effect on Naruto, the turmoil in his cerulean eyes diminishing somewhat. He turned to look at Koushin, the corner of his lips curving upwards in a small but grateful smile. And let's not forget Killer Bee of Kumo, Koushin added, his voice filled with conviction. He too is happy with who he is, despite being a Jinchuriki. He has embraced his power, and he's loved and respected by his village for it. Orochimaru's gaze hardened at Koushin's words, his fingers twitching subtly in irritation. He hadn't expected such a staunch defense, nor had he anticipated Koushin's ability to bolster the spirits of his allies. But he wasn't about to back down. His grin returned, all the more malicious. "Such a heartfelt speech, Koushin-kun," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But it doesn't change the fact that being a Jinchuriki is a curse. A life of solitude, of fear. A life where you're nothing more than a weapon." He let his gaze wander over Naruto, Rashi, and Utakata, a knowing smile on his face. "Tell me, Naruto, Rashi, Utakata," he began, his tone dangerously sweet, "are you truly happy with the way things are? Are you content being weapons for your villages?" Orochimaru's gaze was piercing, his question hanging heavy in the air. The three Jinchuriki fell silent, each caught in the throes of his own thoughts. Despite Koushin's words, the reality of their situation was not something they could easily ignore. Orochimaru had struck a nerve, and he knew it. "But there's a way out," Orochimaru continued, his voice taking on a persuasive edge. "A way to free yourselves from your tailed beasts and live your lives on your own terms." His gaze shifted to Koushin, a challenging glint in his golden eyes. "Gaara of the Sand has already joined us, Koushin-kun," he revealed, the smirk on his face growing wider. He was tired of being used, tired of being shunned by his own village. So, he chose freedom. He chose the Akatsuki. "Enough is enough," Koushin declared, his voice echoing across the deserted bridge. His violet eyes sparkled with an unwavering resolve as he held Orochimaru's gaze. Despite the persuasive argument the snake Sannin had laid out, he refused to allow it to sway the minds of the two Jinchuriki standing before him. "There will be no peaceful way out of this," he finally said, his voice carrying a note of finality. "Since we cannot let you take two of them away, nor will you let us go with them. Let's fight, see who has the bigger fist." With a swift movement, Koushin bit into his thumb, his blood spilling onto the seal etched into his palm. With a decisive flourish, he slapped his hands onto the ground, releasing a plume of smoke. The cloud dissipated, revealing the formidable figures of two lava Atranax. They were towering figures of animated molten rock, their bodies radiating intense heat that distorted the air around them. Flames danced across their forms, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Their eyes, formed from swirling, molten orbs, blazed with an untamed fire that mirrored their summoner's determination. They floated just above the ground, the heat they radiated causing the air to shimmer around them. Their appearance elicited a ripple of surprise from Orochimaru and the other observers, their gazes instantly drawn to the fiery giants. At Koushin's side, Naruto, inspired by his brother's move, unsheathed his sword, the Sorrow Cutter. Its blade shimmered in the late afternoon light, the intricate carvings etched onto it glowing faintly. Standing firm next to Koushin, Naruto looked ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The rest of Team 7, Team 3, Team 8, Team 10, and Team Guy also emerged from their hiding spots, taking up positions beside Naruto and Koushin. Each of them held a determined gaze, ready to defend their friends and their village. Orochimaru, seemingly unperturbed by the show of force, responded with an amused chuckle. His golden eyes glinted with intrigue, his smirk never leaving his face. "Ah, I see we're resorting to brute strength then," he mused aloud, clearly relishing the prospect of a fight. Orochimaru studied the faces of the shinobi arrayed against him, taking in their resolve, their determination. A wicked gleam sparked in his eyes as he raised his hand, the smirk on his face broadening. "Well then, let's make this interesting," he declared, his voice echoing ominously in the silence. Slapping his palm onto the ground, he shouted with fervor, "Kuchios, Edo Tensei." As the words left his lips, the earth around them began to tremble, sending waves of unease through the gathered shinobi. Chapter 101, Old and New Enemies. From the ground, dozens of coffins began to emerge, the wooden lids sliding open with an ominous creak. From within the coffins, an array of figures stepped out, their lifeless eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. These were shinobi who had once lived, loved, and fought, but were now nothing more than pawns under Orochimaru's control. As the shinobi from Team 7, Team 3, Team 8, Team 10, and Team 9 recognized the faces of those who had been resurrected, their expressions shifted from shock to horror. These were members of the Uchiha clan, the Yuki clan, the Kagaya clan. Many had faced them in battles, while others were legends told in stories. On top of them, Deidara, Sasori, Jozu, the nameless Akatsuki member Koushin and Kakashi killed in Wave, were also in their midst. These resurrected shinobi were from different villages, different eras, but they all had one thing in common: they had been powerful in their own right. Now, they were weapons at Orochimaru's disposal, and the realization sent a chill down everyone's spine. "Recognize them, don't you?" Orochimaru asked, his voice laced with amusement. His golden eyes danced with sadistic pleasure as he watched the reactions of the gathered shinobi. "The very best of your villages, now under my control." A wave of anger and resentment surged through the shinobi facing him. Orochimaru's vile technique, using the bodies of the fallen as his pawns, was a disgrace to their memory and their sacrifices. They knew they had to put a stop to this madness, not just for themselves, but for the sake of those who had been forced into this unnatural existence. Naruto gritted his teeth, his gaze hardening as he looked at the resurrected shinobi. This was wrong, and he would not stand for it. He was ready to fight, to put these shinobi to rest once again. Jariah and the other members of the joint teams held their positions, ready to face Orochimaru and his undead army. They were united by a shared sense of duty and the will to protect their friends and villages. Despite the immense odds, they were prepared to fight to the bitter end. This confrontation was no longer just about saving Rashi and Utakata, it was about protecting the honor and dignity of the fallen shinobi. It was about standing against Orochimaru's desecration of the dead. It was a fight they couldn't afford to lose. As soon as the resurrected corpses gained sentience, Jozu, the former Akatsuki member known for his incredible strength and rock-hard skin, locked eyes with Koushin. The anger that simmered in his hollow gaze was palpable, his guttural howl sending a shiver down everyone's spine. "Back for another round, pretty boy?" Koushin taunted, his casual tone contrasting sharply with the tense atmosphere. His smirk widened. "Didn't get enough the first time?" Beside him, Naruto had a hard time keeping his gaze steady as Deidara and Sasori turned to him, their ghostly eyes empty yet full of hostility. The corners of Deidara's mouth twitched upwards, shaping into a sinister grin that was a stark reminder of their previous encounters. "Round 2, HM? You ready for some art, Naruto?" Deidara's voice dripped with scorn. The blonde shinobi clenched his fists, his blue eyes brimming with determination. "Art is an explosion, right?" "Let's see how explosive you are this time," Naruto challenged, his voice full of defiance. The members of the Uchiha clan looked coldly at the Konoha ninjas, their eyes burning with hatred and bitterness. The pain of their clan's destruction still lingered, twisted into a deep-seated resentment for the village that had betrayed them. In contrast, the Yuki and Kagaya clan members seemed reluctant, their faces painted with despair and helplessness. Forced into a fight against their will, they had no choice but to obey Orochimaru's command. As Orochimaru's ghastly ensemble of resurrected shinobi took their places on the battlefield, an intense air of tension swept across the Konoha ninjas. Standing in stark opposition were Team Guy and the resurrected members of the Uchiha clan, their energies palpable in the dwindling daylight. Might Guy, in his typical fashion, struck a flamboyant pose. His grin was wide and infectious, refusing to let the serious atmosphere dampen his spirits. "Ah, the fires of youth burn brightly today," he exclaimed, his hands on his hips as he beamed at his students. Niji, Lee, and Tenten were in tow, their gazes unyielding despite facing some of the most formidable shinobi from the notorious Uchiha clan. Guy's booming declaration was met with a mirroring enthusiasm from Rock Lee. His stance mirrored that of his teacher as he called out, "We're with you, Guy-sensei." The resolve reflected in Lee's eyes, his fist held high in readiness, spread an infectious wave of determination to his teammates. Across from them, the Uchihas glowered, their Sharingan eyes glaring with a cold, icy rage. The members consisted of a formidable lineup, their skills remembered even in death. Their gazes were fixated on Team Guy, who they perceived as an insult to their clan's legacy. "Prepare to meet the wrath of the Uchiha," one of the Uchiha proclaimed. His tone was cold, void of any emotions, the horrifying aftereffect of Orochimaru's Edo Tensei. Might Guy raised an eyebrow, his grin still as infectious as ever. "Well, then," he said, an edge of steel in his tone. "You should know that the fires of our youth aren't easily extinguished." With a sudden burst of movement, Guy launched himself forward, body a blur. He aimed a fist towards the closest Uchiha, a powerful technique known as the leaf-hot wind ready to be unleashed. The Uchiha countered, a flash of ninjutsu, fire-style, fireball jutsu, sent directly towards the incoming Guy. Lee followed his sensei's lead, his own fists clenched tight. "Primary Lotus!" he yelled, his body spinning with tremendous speed, aiming towards another Uchiha who readied water-style, water dragon bullet jutsu. Neji, the Hyuga prodigy, was next to move. His Byakugan activated, veins near his eyes prominent as he surveyed the battlefield, strategizing a plan of attack. 8 trigrams 64 palms. He darted towards an Uchiha with speed that belied his calm demeanor, his gentle fist technique targeting the enemy's chakra points. Tenten, too, stepped up, armed with her summoning jutsu. "Ninja art, tools summoning." She called out, a scroll unrolling as a whirlwind of weapons flew towards their foes. Combined with wind-style, gale palm, her attacks were aimed with deadly precision. The first clash was a spectacle of light and sound. Guy's fists connected, but the Uchiha's jutsu exploded in a searing fireball. Both were thrown back, Guy's form wreathed in smoke, while the Uchiha struggled against the overpowering heat. Yet, as the smoke cleared, Guy stood tall, unscathed, his dynamic entry having cut through the flames. Lee was met with a surging water dragon, yet his primary lotus cut through, the force of his taijutsu technique overpowering the jutsu. The Uchiha was sent spiraling, defeated. Niji's attack was a flurry of precise strikes. The Uchiha's desperate attempt to counter with Earth-style, Earth Wall was nullified as Niji phased through, his rotation technique dispelling the attack. The Uchiha was left incapacitated, his chakra points sealed by Niji's relentless assault. Tenten's weapons met their targets unerringly, each strike enhanced by the wind chakra. The Uchihas were caught off guard, weapons piercing their bodies only to pass through, the effect of Edo Tensei rendering them unharmed. They retaliated with lightning-style, electromagnetic murder, but Tenten was quick to counter with wind-style, gust formation wall, the electrifying attack neutralized. Guy's voice cut through the ensuing chaos. "Lee, Niji, Tenten, 8 gates formation." With shared nods, they gathered around Guy, adopting the formation. As Guy and Lee opened 3 of their respective gates, the power emanating from them was tremendous. Chapter 102 Team Guy vs. Uchiha. "Are you ready, team?" Guy's voice resounded across the battlefield, filled with determination. "Always, Guy-sensei." Lee responded, a brilliant smile matching his sensei's. "Count on us," Niji chimed in, his calm demeanor never wavering, the veins near his eyes pulsating with the activation of his Byakugan. "Let's do this," Tenten said, her eyes glinting with a resolve as she clutched her summoning scroll tighter. With an affirmative nod, they braced themselves as a surge of chakra coursed through them. Suddenly, the battlefield erupted with activity as 10 resurrected Uchiha members lunged forward, their Sharingan spinning menacingly. Guy, his body radiating intense energy from the open gates, shot towards the first Uchiha. "Dynamic entry," he declared, his kick connecting with the Uchiha's guard, breaking it and sending the shinobi flying backwards. Simultaneously, Lee leaped high into the sky, hidden lotus, he bellowed. With a ferocious roar, he rained a volley of bone-crushing kicks on another Uchiha. The ground rumbled as the enemy was sent crashing into the earth. While their taijutsu specialists engaged the front line, Niji focused on the shinobis aiming to flank them. 8 trigrams, air palm. He unleashed a wave of compressed chakra from his palm. The attack took the unsuspecting Uchihas by surprise, disrupting their formation. Beside him, Tintin unfurled another scroll, her fingers danced over the paper. Wind style, heavenly wind slicer. The whirlwind of sharpened weapons she summoned this time carried an unmistakable edge of wind chakra, hurtling towards the opponents with increased ferocity. Guy landed with his usual grace after his dynamic entry had sent the Uchiha spiraling backwards. His eyes burned with fiery determination. "Remember team, coordination is key," he called out, his booming voice cutting through the cacophony of the battlefield. As he stood, one of the Uchihas, a stern-looking man with his Sharingan spinning dangerously, stepped forward. "Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu," he shouted, a volley of flaming shuriken erupting from his mouth and hurtling towards Guy. Just as Guy braced himself, a gust of wind came to his aid. Tintin had her scroll open wide, her eyes determined as she declared, "Wind style, Wind God's fan." A gust swept across the battlefield, quelling the flames before they could touch Guy. "Thank you, Tintin!" Guy exclaimed, grinning as he leaped forward again, charging towards the surprised Uchiha. On the other end of the battlefield, Lee was in midair, his kicks connecting with one Uchiha after another. His agility and strength were unmatched, the effects of the open gates evident in the overwhelming force he was unleashing. "Reverse Lotus," he cried, delivering a series of powerful kicks that sent a trio of Uchiha crashing into the ground. But the Uchihas were formidable foes. One of them, recovering quickly from the impact, performed a hand seal. "Jinjutsu, Sharingan." His eyes met Lee's for a brief moment, but it was enough. Lee suddenly staggered in midair, disoriented. An illusionary world was taking shape around him, the Uchiha's Jinjutsu attempting to trap him. He grunted, shaking his head, trying to dispel the illusion, but the Jinjutsu was strong. Just as the illusion was about to consume him completely, Niji darted in, palm extended. 8 trigrams revolving heaven. His chakra surged, a protective dome forming around him and Lee, repelling the Jinjutsu's effects. "Niji!" Lee gasped, steadying himself as the illusion began to fade. "Stay focused, Lee!" Niji ordered, his gaze hard and concentrated. Even though he was calm, his adrenaline was pumping, the fight far from over. Amidst the chaos, Tintin was holding her own, the scroll before her glowing with chakra. "Ninja art, flying sword barrage." Her weapons spun wildly in the air before hurtling towards the enemy, guided by her wind chakra. An Uchiha attempted to counter with Earth style, mud wall, but Niji was quick to neutralize it. "Earth style, earth flow spears." Niji commanded, the ground beneath the Uchiha morphing into a forest of sharp earthy spears, shattering the enemy's defense. Chapter 102 Team Guy vs. Uchiha. "Are you ready, team?" Guy's voice resounded across the battlefield, filled with determination. "Always, Guy-sensei." Lee responded, a brilliant smile matching his sensei's. "Count on us," Niji chimed in, his calm demeanor never wavering, the veins near his eyes pulsating with the activation of his Byakugan. "Let's do this," Tintin said, her eyes glinting with a resolve as she clutched her summoning scroll tighter. With an affirmative nod, they braced themselves as a surge of chakra coursed through them. Suddenly, the battlefield erupted with activity as 10 resurrected Uchiha members lunged forward, their Sharingan spinning menacingly. Guy, his body radiating intense energy from the open gates, shot towards the first Uchiha. "Dynamic entry," he declared, his kick connecting with the Uchiha's guard, breaking it and sending the shinobi flying backwards. Simultaneously, Lee leaped high into the sky, "Hidden Lotus," he bellowed. With a ferocious roar, he rained a volley of bone-crushing kicks on another Uchiha. The ground rumbled as the enemy was sent crashing into the earth. While their taijutsu specialists engaged the front line, Niji focused on the shinobis aiming to flank them. 8 trigrams, air palm. He unleashed a wave of compressed chakra from his palm. The attack took the unsuspecting Uchihas by surprise, disrupting their formation. Beside him, Tintin unfurled another scroll, her fingers danced over the paper. "Wind style, heavenly wind slicer." The whirlwind of sharpened weapons she summoned this time carried an unmistakable edge of wind chakra, hurtling towards the opponents with increased ferocity. Guy landed with his usual grace after his dynamic entry had sent the Uchiha spiraling backwards. His eyes burned with fiery determination. "Remember team, coordination is key," he called out, his booming voice cutting through the cacophony of the battlefield. As he stood, one of the Uchihas, a stern-looking man with his Sharingan spinning dangerously, stepped forward. "Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu," he shouted, a volley of flaming shuriken erupting from his mouth and hurtling towards Guy. Just as Guy braced himself, a gust of wind came to his aid. Tintin had her scroll open wide, her eyes determined as she declared, "Wind style, Wind God's fan." A gust swept across the battlefield, quelling the flames before they could touch Guy. "Thank you, Tintin," Guy exclaimed, grinning as he leaped forward again, charging towards the surprised Uchiha. On the other end of the battlefield, Lee was in midair, his kicks connecting with one Uchiha after another. His agility and strength were unmatched, the effects of the open gates evident in the overwhelming force he was unleashing. "Reverse Lotus," he cried, delivering a series of powerful kicks that sent a trio of Uchiha crashing into the ground. But the Uchihas were formidable foes. One of them, recovering quickly from the impact, performed a hand seal. "Jinjutsu, Sharingan." His eyes met Lee's for a brief moment, but it was enough. Lee suddenly staggered in midair, disoriented. An illusionary world was taking shape around him, the Uchiha's Jinjutsu attempting to trap him. He grunted, shaking his head, trying to dispel the illusion, but the Jinjutsu was strong. Just as the illusion was about to consume him completely, Niji darted in, palm extended. 8 trigrams revolving heaven. His chakra surged, a protective dome forming around him and Lee, repelling the Jinjutsu's effects. "Niji!" Lee gasped, steadying himself as the illusion began to fade. "Stay focused, Lee," Niji ordered, his gaze hard and concentrated. Even though he was calm, his adrenaline was pumping, the fight far from over. Amidst the chaos, Tintin was holding her own, the scroll before her glowing with chakra. "Ninja art, flying sword barrage." Her weapons spun wildly in the air before hurtling towards the enemy, guided by her wind chakra. An Uchiha attempted to counter with Earth Style, Mud Wall, but Niji was quick to neutralize it. "Earth Style, Earth Flow Spears," Niji commanded, the ground beneath the Uchiha morphing into a forest of sharp earthy spears, shattering the enemy's defense. "Good move, Niji," Tintin praised, focusing her attention back on her scroll. The Uchihas were relentless, their attacks coming from all directions, but their teamwork was unparalleled. Suddenly, Guy's voice echoed through the battlefield. "Everyone, formation!" Team Dai quickly regrouped. As Guy and Lee opened the 4th gate, their energy levels surged. Tintin unfurled a new scroll, her hands moving swiftly over it as a gust of wind whirled around them. Niji's Byakugan glowed brighter, his palm facing their opponents. 8 gates assault. Guy roared, launching himself and Lee into the air with a tremendous burst of speed. At the same time, Tintin called forth a swarm of giant shuriken, wind chakra giving them a lethal edge. "Wind style, twin typhoon shuriken," she announced, her voice confident and strong. 2 massive vortexes of razor-sharp shuriken roared towards the Uchihas, forcing them to scatter. "Earth style, Earth Dragon Bullet," Niji declared. His hand seals were crisp and precise, his chakra concentration perfect. The ground trembled as an enormous dragon made of earth and rocks rose, its roar echoing across the field. It unleashed a barrage of earth projectiles, supplementing Tintin's attack. High above, Guy and Lee, their bodies pulsating with the intense power of the 8 gates, descended upon their adversaries. 5th gate, Gate of Closing, open! Guy's voice resounded across the battlefield. An enormous aura of red steam billowed out from him and Lee as they accelerated, their movements turning into a blur. "Morning Peacock!" Guy's fists moved so rapidly they ignited the air around him, forming a peacock-shaped aura of flames. "Hidden Lotus!" Lee echoed, a maelstrom of furious kicks creating a devastating shockwave that rippled across the battlefield. The battlefield became a spectacle of raw power and strategic genius. The peacock-shaped flames and shockwaves from Dai and Lee's attacks intertwined with Tenten's twirling typhoon of shurikens and Niji's barrage of earth projectiles. The Uchihas were overwhelmed, their coordinated attacks disintegrating under the relentless onslaught. But they wouldn't go down easily. A group of Uchihas combined their efforts, channeling their chakra into a collective technique. Fire style, Great Fire Annihilation. A giant wave of fire erupted, hurtling towards Team Guy. But with a determined look, Niji moved to intercept. Earth style, Earth Dome. He shouted, raising a protective barrier of earth around them, blocking the incoming flames. Simultaneously, Tenten launched another attack. Wind style, Gale Palm. She pushed her chakra into the wind, guiding it towards the fire. The gust of wind fanned the flames, but also redirected them upwards and away from them. With the Uchihas momentarily staggered by their own redirected attack, Guy and Lee saw their chance. Severe Leaf Hurricane. They both shouted in unison, delivering a synchronized series of powerful kicks that sent the Uchihas sprawling. Tenten quickly unfurled another scroll, revealing a containment seal. Sealing art, Tiger Vision Staring Bullet. She swiftly formed the necessary hand seals, and the Tiger Vision seal flared to life, tendrils of light reaching out to the fallen Uchihas, who were struggling to rise. Seeing the sealing technique, Niji immediately provided support. 8 trigrams, Mountain Crusher. His palm struck the ground, and a wave of force sped towards the Uchihas, pinning them down, making them easy targets for Tenten's sealing technique. One by one, the resurrected Uchihas were pulled into the seal, their forms disintegrating into streams of light before they were captured inside the scroll. The battlefield fell eerily silent as the last of the Uchihas was sealed away, ending the intense battle. Panting heavily but grinning widely, Guy turned to his students. Well done, team. Our youthful energy prevailed. Chapter 103, Team 3 vs. Yuki Clan. Hyuga Iroha, the young leader of Team 3, kept his gaze steady, meeting the chilling stare of the formidable member of the Yuki clan. His breath hitched in his throat at the sight of the warrior, his ghostly eyes glinting with a frosty light. The air around him shimmered with an ethereal frostiness, the manifestation of his ice release. But Iroha was not alone. Beside him stood Sai, Shin, and Yu, their faces a mask of resolute determination, ready to back him up. Their presence was a beacon of reassurance for Iroha, a reminder that he didn't have to face this challenge alone. Shin, the sword-wielding member of the team, twirled his blade with a confidence that reflected his mastery over it. He was a natural with the sword and had an affinity for the lightning release, a lethal combination that made him a formidable opponent. His gaze, sharp as his blade, did not waver from the Yuki clan member as he prepared to strike. On Shin's other side stood Yu, the Jinjutsu specialist. Yu's eyes were gleaming with an odd mix of anticipation and pleasure. Her hands worked smoothly, fingers dancing in a quick sequence of hand signs. She was the team's wild card, her Jinjutsu a testament to her intelligence and creativity. But there was a dark edge to her abilities, a slight sadistic streak that manifested when she toyed with the minds of her enemies. Sai, standing at the other end, exuded a quiet intensity. His brush, his unique weapon, held firmly in his grip, was ready to summon ink beasts at a moment's notice. Despite his seemingly calm demeanor, there was a simmering aggression in his eyes that promised a ruthless battle. Yuki clan, huh? Iroha started, a chill creeping into his voice as he studied his opponents. We've studied about you, your ice release. It's a formidable skill. But that doesn't mean we'll let it intimidate us. Shin's lips curled into a confident smile as he chimed in, and we're no pushovers, either. You should know that. His hand tightened around the hilt of his sword, electricity crackling along the edge of the blade. Prepare to see some lightning up close, he warned, his tone low and dangerous. Yu's eyes sparkled with a sadistic glee as she added, and I promise you, it won't be a walk in the park. I'll make sure of that. Sai remained quiet, but his gaze spoke volumes. He was ready for the fight, prepared to lay down everything to protect his comrades and his village. Team 3, to battle. Iroha announced, his voice echoing through the desolate battlefield. His team stood united, ready for the formidable Yuki clan members resurrected by Orochimaru, the chilling sight of their ghostly forms looming ominously before them. The Yuki clan members were not there of their free will. They had been resurrected by the snake Sannin, Orochimaru, against their wishes, forcing them to fight Team 3. However, as the unwilling puppets of Orochimaru, they decided to resist his control, alerting their opponents to their intended moves. Iroha, began the Yuki clansman nearest to him, the frost in his eyes reflecting the moonlight. We shall attack you with our ice release, icy winds. Prepare yourself. Iroha, despite the fear creeping into his veins, steeled himself for the impending onslaught. Thanks for the heads up, he responded dryly. Just then, Sai leapt into the fray, his brush ready, and called out, Ninpo, Choji. Summoning a barrage of ink lions and tigers that charged at the incoming icy wind, effectively blocking the ice jutsu. Ah, the old beasts of ink, eh? Good one! Sai stated, his words a clear imitation of Jariah's light-hearted banter. But beneath his jovial tone, there was a clear note of determination. Meanwhile, Shin was in the heat of the battle, twirling his sword with an easy grace, the crackling lightning along its edge providing a stark contrast to the icy surroundings. His eyes locked onto one of the Yuki clansmen. We are launching ice release, 1,000 flying water needles of death at you, Shin, the clansman warned, his voice cold and detached. Shin nodded his thanks and retorted, then here's my reply, right ton, thunderbolt. With a swift movement, he slashed the air with his sword, releasing a wave of electricity that collided with the incoming ice needles, shattering them instantly. On the other side of the battlefield, Yu was preparing her own form of attack. The Yuki clansman before her announced, Ice release, Ice rock dome of magnificent nothingness is my next move, Yu. Her eyes glinted, thanks for letting me know. Let's see how you handle this, though, Jinjutsu, Realm of Torment. Her hand signs finished, her Jinjutsu ensnared the Yuki clan member, plunging him into a world of illusions designed to torment and incapacitate. Just as the ice dome was about to form around Yu, the Yuki clan member screamed out in agony, clutching his head as the terrifying images that Yu had painted in his mind took hold. Artistic realm, reality canvas. Sai called out as he waved his brush, glyphs, and symbols sprouting from its tip. They interwove and grew, swirling and twisting, creating an ethereal gateway. A pocket dimension opened up, swallowing both Sai and a Yuki clansman. The dimension shimmered with abstract, surreal colors, fluctuating landscapes, and a sky that warped between sunrise and midnight. Within this realm, Sai could manipulate reality to his liking. This is... The Yuki clansman hesitated, looking around in confusion. The icy demeanor was melting away, replaced with disorientation. Ice release, tearing dragon fierce tiger, he warned, despite the bewildering circumstances. With a flick of his brush, Sai manipulated gravity, sending the clansman stumbling to what seemed like the sky before he could form hand seals. And here, I control reality, Sai asserted, his voice echoing within the illusory realm. Back on the battlefield, Shin was clashing swords with another member of the Yuki clan. Ice release, piercing ice drizzle, the clansman warned. Ice shards began to rain down from the sky, glinting dangerously. Thank you, Shin grinned, his eyes sparkled with a steely resolve. Lightning crackled around his blade as he performed a series of swift, precise slashes, his sword leaving streaks of electricity in its wake. Raijin's calligraphy. He channeled his lightning-infused chakra through his blade, the power enhancing his strike, while simultaneously drawing sealing formulas on his opponent. His blade met the falling ice shards, shattering them while still approaching the Yuki clansman. The clansman's eyes widened as Shin's electrified blade made contact, the sealing formula imprinted on his body. Meanwhile, Yu was having her own battle of wits with a Yuki clansman. The man looked at her with a troubled gaze, a sense of regret for the battle he was forced into. Ice release, frozen heaven's 100 flowers, he warned her. Yu Yu's fingers danced in a sequence of signs as she said, thank you for your kindness. Let's see how you handle this, Jinjutsu, realm of torment. She locked eyes with him, ensnaring him into her Jinjutsu. His hands froze mid-seal as a visible shudder coursed through his body. Simultaneously, Iroha was toe-to-toe with a Yuki clansman, the icy cold stare in the enemy's eyes sending a shiver down his spine. Ice release, ice-breaking sledgehammer, his opponent warned, even as he prepared for the attack. Iroha's eyes narrowed. He took a stance, chakras swirling around him. He was ready. Earth release, earth flow rampart, he declared, slamming his palms onto the ground. The earth beneath them shook, then rose into a large protective barrier that effectively blocked the incoming ice sledgehammer. The scene on the battlefield was one of chaos and adrenaline. Each of the Team 3 members were engaged in their own individual battles, a symphony of various jutsus and techniques echoing through the air. From within his artistic realm, Sai was using his unique jutsu to outmaneuver his opponent, creating traps and beasts from his drawings, turning the tide in his favor. Shin's technique, Ragent's calligraphy, was proving to be formidable. The sealing formulas he left on his opponents were starting to take effect, restricting the movement of his opponent. In contrast, Yu Yu's battlefield was eerily calm. Her opponent was caught within her Jinjutsu, writhing in unseen torment. The illusion she had woven was so powerful that the Yuki clansman was immobilized in the real world. Iroha, on the other hand, had his hands full. His opponent was relentless, launching one ice release attack after another. But Iroha was no novice. He met each attack with an equally powerful earth release technique, ensuring his defense was unbreachable. Ice release, diamond dust, the Yuki clansman announced, preparing a cloud of chilling diamond dust aimed towards Iroha. Before the attack reached him, Iroha channeled his chakra into the ground beneath him, earth release, earth-style wall. A huge wall of earth rose before him, effectively blocking the incoming diamond dust. Meanwhile, Shin, parrying a barrage of ice weapons with his electrified blade, took a leap back, a plan forming in his mind. Ragent's calligraphy, 1,000 sealing strikes. He cried out, lunging towards his opponent. He spun, the lightning on his blade dancing in the dark, his sword leaving a trail of sealing formulas in the air. Back in Sai's artistic realm, Sai and the Yuki clansmen clashed repeatedly, the landscape changing with each stroke of Sai's brush. Sai twisted the gravity, manipulated the terrain, and conjured creatures to help him in the fight. Frozen Time, Ice Age, warned the Yuki clansman, using his chakra to turn the entire dimension into an icy hell. But Sai was prepared. With a quick brush stroke, he drew a massive fire-breathing creature, countering the icy atmosphere with a burst of flame. Back on the battlefield, Yu Yu was dealing the final blow. With a sadistic smile on her face, she declared, Jinjutsu, mind shatter. Amplifying the illusions her opponent was seeing, the Yuki clansman cried out, collapsing on the ground, his mind unable to handle the overload. In the span of what seemed like hours, the battlefield was starting to clear. One by one, the Yuki clan members were falling, their energy depleting under the relentless assault of Team 3. Sai, Shin, Yu Yu, and Iroha stood together, panting and sweating, but victorious. We did it, Shin panted, looking around at the fallen opponents. Yes, Iroha replied, his voice shaking with relief. We did. With a victorious smile, they all looked at each other. They had faced the formidable Yuki clan and had come out victorious. It was not just a victory for them, but a testament to their unity and strength as Team 3. Their resilience and skill had shone brightly on the battlefield, a beacon of hope for their village. With their hearts filled with pride and camaraderie, they turned to leave, knowing that they were ready for any challenge that lay ahead of them. Chapter 104, Team 10 vs Jinchuriki. In a blink of an eye, Koushin was next to Eno, the shock of his sudden movement causing a stir among the group. With a teasing smile, he gently cradled her face, and planted a light kiss on her cheek, causing a mild blush to spread across her face. Careful now, Eno, he said, a playful twinkle in his eye. I'd hate to see a pretty face like yours get scratched. Eno, her eyes sparkling with resolve, smiled back and kissed him on the cheek in return. I can take care of myself, you know, she retorted, her voice filled with a mix of affection and annoyance. In fact, with my new technique, you'll be the one needing the saving. With a quick salute to Koushin, she dashed back to join Shikamaru and Choji. Their gazes met, a wordless promise passing between them. This was a battle they were determined to win. The air was thick with tension as Eno, Choji, Shikamaru, and Asuma stood on one side, their gazes locked onto Rashi and Utakata, the formidable Jinchuriki they were tasked with detaining. Don't underestimate them, Asuma's gravelly voice rang out, the flicker of his lighter igniting his signature trench knives. Shikamaru nodded, his hands sliding into the seal for the shadow possession jutsu. Strategy over power, he murmured. Choji cracked his knuckles, his robust form imposing. Got it. Eno, her blonde hair pulled back into her usual high ponytail, tightened her fists, electricity sparking subtly between her fingers. Her blue eyes, hardened with determination, met those of her opponents. Let's go. With that, they charged, blurring into a cacophony of motion. Rashi met Asuma's charge with a wall of solid, unmoving lava. Asuma dodged, his trench knives carving through the air as they sparred in a deadly dance. The sound of steel clashing against hardened lava resonated through the battlefield. In the meantime, Utakata moved to engage Eno. She met him with a flurry of electrically charged punches, each one crackling with vibrant energy. She danced around his bubble-based attacks, her agility keeping her one step ahead of the cascading spheres. Right-ton, thunderbolt fist. She cried out, her punch coming down on one of the bubbles. The impact sent a shower of sparks flying as the bubble exploded, the shockwave throwing Utakata off balance. Meanwhile, Choji, bulked up by his partial multi-size technique, faced off against Rashi's lava golem. Shikamaru stood back, his shadow weaving through the chaos, waiting for the opportune moment to trap their adversaries. With this, pairings were decided. Asuma with Choji's assist started to battle with Four-Tails Jinchuriki Rashi. And Eno, with Shikamaru's assist started to battle with Utakata. You're surprisingly good, Utakata admitted, as he jumped back to avoid Eno's electrified attacks. And you're just getting started, Eno retorted, smiling despite the fatigue creeping into her limbs. Her eyes sparked with determination, mirroring the electricity in her hands. Back with Asuma and Rashi, the sound of metal on stone echoed through the field. Doton, mud wall. Asuma shouted. A wall of earth sprang up, blocking a wave of lava from Rashi. Using his wind release, dust cloud technique, he blew the heated lava back towards Rashi. In response, Rashi formed hand signs quickly, and a larger golem of lava came to life. Asuma dodged, his body dripping with sweat from the intense heat. Simultaneously, Shikamaru finally found his opening, and his shadow snaked out, latching onto the shadows of Utakata and Rashi. But the Jinchuriki were prepared. With a burst of chakra, the seal on their bodies glowed, and Shikamaru was flung back as his technique broke. Damn, they're tough, Shikamaru grunted, rising back to his feet. Asuma's trench knives clashed against Rashi's molten rock, sparks flew as the hardened magma met cold steel. Asuma's movements were a blur, his speed and agility honed from years of being a Jonin and former member of the 12 Guardian Ninja. Rashi was equally adept, his body transformed and strengthened by the Four-Tails. You're not as soft as you look, Sarutobi, Rashi grunted, pivoting on his heel to meet Asuma's next assault. And you're just as stubborn as your tailed beast, Asuma retorted, breaking off briefly to reignite his trench knives. A sudden rustle from behind drew the attention of both Jinchuriki. Eno held out a scroll, unrolling it to reveal the meticulously detailed seals within. Sealing art, corpse release, she declared. From the scroll, two forms materialized. The first was a hulking bear, its thick fur discolored with age but otherwise in pristine condition. The second, a massive tiger, its stripes a stark contrast against the ghostly white of its preserved corpse. Eno placed her hand on the bear, her eyes glazing over as she initiated her new technique. Mind transfer, necro-puppeteer, she announced. Her body slumped, her consciousness shifting into the hulking beast. The bear's lifeless eyes sparked to life, mirroring Eno's electric blue gaze. She opened a pouch on the bear's abdomen and carefully stowed her own body inside for safekeeping. On the other side, Shikamaru was in the midst of his own preparations. He had positioned himself behind the massive tiger, his fingers deftly forming the shadow seal. Shadow control, necromanipulation, he murmured. As the seal took effect, the lifeless tiger stirred, its shadow extending and merging with Shikamaru's own. The tiger's eyes opened, glowing eerily as they fixed on the enemies. Choji, noticing the changes in his comrades, channeled his yang chakra into his muscles and bones, causing them to expand slightly and becoming noticeably denser. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the incoming assault. Yang release, Titan's physique, he declared. The dust was alive with conflict as Eno and her necro-puppeteer form barreled towards Utakata, her bear's hulking form leading a trail in the dirt. She roared, a grating, echoey sound that emanated from the bear's maw. Charging at her opponent, she swung a massive paw. Utakata retaliated with a torrent of bubbles. Bubble release, bubble barrage, he cried. Hundreds of iridescent orbs spun towards Eno. The attack was a sight to behold, beautiful and deadly in its elegance. Eno growled, a sudden surge of electricity swirling around the bear's form. Right ton, thunderous swipe. The electrified paw struck the incoming bubbles, causing them to burst in a vibrant explosion of light and energy. Utakata was momentarily blinded, providing Eno a window of opportunity. Simultaneously, Shikamaru's eyes narrowed, his tiger prowling low to the ground. He had to wait, his eyes flicking over to Utakata. Patience and precision were his game. In the midst of this, Choji was a force to reckon with. He stomped forward, his normally gentle eyes alight with steely determination. His muscles bulged, veins snaking along his arms under the effect of his Titan's physique technique. His body was a testament to the formidable power of the Akimichi clan, fortified and optimized without the characteristic increase in size. Rashi stared at Choji, the glow from the lava golem flickering in his eyes. He hurled a molten boulder at him. Yotan, molten boulder. With a grunt, Choji raised his arms, defending against the molten projectile. The boulder struck him, but instead of scorching and shattering upon impact, it was stopped, Choji's muscular form unyielding. Choji pushed back, his powerful arms hurling the boulder back at Rashi with an earth-shaking roar. Asuma danced around the fiery chaos, his trenched knives flickering like wraiths in the evening gloom. Each strike was met with a counterstrike from Rashi. Futon, wind blade. Asuma called out, his trenched knives slicing through the air, generating a sharp gust that was aimed straight at Rashi. Rashi shielded his face, but the wind was relentless. Grunting, he formed hand signs and breathed in deep. Katan, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. From his mouth erupted a volley of small fireballs, each one aimed at Asuma. Asuma dodged, his agility on full display. His trenched knives cut through the fiery projectiles, extinguishing them midair, yet a few scorched his flak jacket, smoke curling up from the fabric. Back with Utakata, Eno's bare form lunged, her electrified claws coming down on the momentarily blinded Jinchuriki. Utakata raised an arm to protect himself, but the blow sent him sprawling back. Despite the physical pain, Utakata smirked, his eyes gleaming. He quickly weaved hand signs, his hands a blur. Water release, rising water slicer. A high-pressure stream of water shot from his mouth, targeting the hulking bear. Eno growled, her bare form rearing back to dodge the attack, but the water caught its flank. With a grunt, she landed back on all fours, her muscles tensing. Eno, piloting the hulking bear, growled deeply, her icy blue eyes locked onto Utakata. She felt strange, foreign power coursing through her veins, feeling the cold stiffness of the bear's body under her control. "Your bubbles won't stop me," she challenged, her voice layered with the bear's own guttural tones. Utakata just smiled at her, his eyes gleaming with a hint of intrigue. "We'll see about that, Yamanaka." Utakata slid his fingers together, his hands a blur of motion. Suiton, Bubble Dome Jutsu. In a swift motion, Utakata was surrounded by a large, glistening bubble that encased him completely. Shikamaru, in the middle of his own preparation, watched from the corner of his eyes. A smirk crept on his lips. "You're in my world now, Utakata," he murmured, his fingers forming the familiar shadow seal. The tiger's shadow, connected to Shikamaru's, elongated and slithered towards Utakata's dome. The darkness made the bubble opaque, blinding Utakata from the outside world. Shikamaru's shadow control, necromanipulation was taking effect. Chapter 105, Eno and Shikamaru vs. Utakata. On the other side of the battlefield, Choji was gearing himself up for his next assault. His muscles were pulsating under the strain of his yang release, Titan's physique, veins popping on his arms. He stared at Rashi, the heat from his lava golem glowing in his eyes. "Your molten rock won't faze me, Rashi," Choji declared. His tone was firm, his eyes steely with determination. Rashi smirked, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Strong words, Akimichi. Let's put them to the test." Rashi's hands moved in a flurry of motion, and a fiery boulder of molten rock sprouted from the golem's chest. "Yoton, lava projectile," he roared. In response, Choji charged forward, his fists clenched tightly. "Human boulder!" His body started to spin at high speed, and he crashed into the molten boulder. The resulting explosion sent a wave of intense heat across the battlefield, yet Choji emerged unscathed, his body shrugging off the molten splash. Asuma watched, his eyes flicking from Choji to Rashi. He weaved through the aftermath of the explosion, his trench knives glinting dangerously under the glow of the battlefield. "You won't be getting through that easily, Rashi," he said, his voice steady. He knew Rashi's tailed beast made him a formidable opponent, but Asuma was ready. "Futon, Wind Scythe Jutsu." Asuma launched forward, a swift gust of wind following in his wake. The sharp blades of wind sliced through the heat of the battlefield, aiming straight for Rashi. Rashi reacted quickly, bringing up a wall of lava to shield himself. The clash of wind and lava sent up plumes of steam, obscuring their view. Yet, Asuma remained unfazed, his instincts guiding him. He felt the change in temperature, sensed the movement in the smoke, and knew Rashi was on the move. Back with Utakata and Eno, the bubble dome surrounding Utakata was completely engulfed in darkness. Eno saw this as an opportunity. "Raiton, lightning surge," she commanded. Her bare form surged forward, a charge of electricity enveloping her body. She slammed into the bubble dome, the electricity crackling on contact. The bubble dome convulsed, contracting and expanding under the electric assault. Utakata inside was thrown off balance, his footing unstable on the rippling surface. Meanwhile, Shikamaru watched, his eyes glinting with anticipation. He waited for the moment, the perfect opportunity to trap Utakata with his shadow. The tiger under his control prowled low to the ground, its tail flicking restlessly. It was a game of patience and strategy. Simultaneously, Asuma emerged from the steam, his trench knives glinting ominously. He sensed Rashi's movement, a soft shift in the heated air. Asuma was ready, his trench knives leading his attack. He charged towards where he suspected Rashi to be, his eyes narrowed. Rashi, however, was quicker than he anticipated. He exploded from the steam, his body morphed by the four tails, a huge lava fist leading his charge. "Yoton, crushing lava punch." Rashi bellowed, his voice reverberating through the battlefield. Asuma, the seasoned jonin, expertly pivoted mid-charge. He brought his trench knives up to defend against the molten fist. The collision of lava and wind-infused metal sent sparks flying in every direction. Asuma was pushed back by the sheer force, yet he dug his heels in, his muscles straining to hold his ground. As the dust from the initial conflicts began to settle, both Jinchuriki slowly rose, their expressions hardened. Utakata and Rashi shared a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They began to release their tailed beast chakra, a ghostly tail appearing behind each. The battlefield suddenly crackled with an intense energy as the tailed beast's presence began to manifest. Eno, in her bare form, stood her ground, her electric blue eyes shining fiercely in the face of the growing threat. "Let's see what you've got, Utakata," she growled, her bare form's muscles tensing in anticipation. The threat of the tailed beast was substantial, but Eno's newfound technique had imbued her with an unfamiliar courage. Utakata's eyes were focused, his form brimming with chakra as the first tail of his tailed beast materialized. "Bubble release, geyser cannon," he called out, his hands forming seals rapidly. From the ground beneath him erupted a torrent of bubbles, spinning violently and barreling towards Eno with an explosive force. Eno acted quickly, her bare form's massive paws slamming into the ground. "Right-ton, electrostatic field," she roared. An electric field formed around her, the electricity crackling and surging in response to Utakata's attack. As the geyser of bubbles collided with the electrostatic field, they burst on contact, causing a series of small, blinding explosions. On the other side, Shikamaru's eyes were narrowed, his shadow connected to the massive tiger. Seeing Utakata unleash his attack, he knew he had to take action. "Shadow control, necromanipulation," Shikamaru murmured, his fingers forming the familiar shadow seal. The tiger's shadow stretched, creeping towards Utakata. It was as if the tiger was ready to pounce, its feral eyes locked onto its target. Utakata, momentarily distracted by the explosions, failed to notice the shadow creeping towards him. Sensing an opportunity, Shikamaru commanded his tiger to lunge at Utakata. With a terrifying roar, the tiger sprang forward, a dark figure against the light of the explosions. "Got you," Shikamaru smirked as he saw his technique taking effect. The shadow of the tiger merged with Utakata's, and suddenly, Utakata found himself unable to move. His body was frozen, the shadow having trapped him in place. Eno seized this moment, pushing through the fading explosions with a roar. "Lightning release, thunderclap crash," she announced, a surge of electric energy swirling around her massive paw. She brought it crashing down on Utakata, the force sending a shockwave through the battlefield. Utakata grunted, his eyes wincing in pain, but his smirk never faded. "Is that all you got, Yamanaka?" he managed to gasp, his voice strained. Despite the paralysis, Utakata was undeterred. He drew a deep breath, his chakra flaring around him. "Suetun, bubble clone jutsu," he declared. Suddenly, his form began to bubble and shimmer, multiple clones emerging from his body. Despite his paralysis, his clones were free to move, and they sprung into action, rushing towards Eno and Shikamaru. Eno's eyes widened, her bare form stance shifting to a defensive position. She was not unfamiliar with clone techniques, but Utakata's utilization of his tailed beast's chakra gave them a level of solidity that made them a substantial threat. With the explosive echoes of Eno's thunderclap crash still ringing in the air, the shadowy battlefield was quickly filled with the replicas of Utakata. His clones stood shoulder to shoulder, and the one trapped by Shikamaru dissipated with a puff of a bubble. Eno's massive bare form snarled, electric sparks crackling around its maw. "They just keep multiplying," she growled, her gaze sweeping over the cloned army. Shikamaru didn't respond. His focus was locked onto finding the real Utakata. His fingers were still locked in a seal, the shadowy tether of his jutsu pulsating between him and the trapped clones. "Find the original," Shikamaru murmured, his voice tight with concentration. "Take out the clones." Without a moment's hesitation, Eno launched forward. Her bare form was a flurry of movement, each swipe of her electrified paws took down a clone. Yet, for each clone she eradicated, another seemed to take its place. The battlefield was filled with bursts of electric energy and the popping of Utakata's bubble clones. Eno looked at the increasingly multiplying clones and grimaced. "Bear isn't the most suitable for this," she muttered, her gaze briefly flickering to the pouch strapped to her abdomen. Reaching into the pouch, the bear's paw extracted another scroll. As the scroll unraveled, a puff of smoke burst forth, revealing a shadowy figure of a cat. Leaving the bear's body, she transferred her consciousness to the cat, a form much faster and agile than her previous one. The bear's body collapsed in an inanimate heap, the once vivid light in its eyes dimming to a dull glaze. As Eno's consciousness entered the cat corpse, it twitched to life, its form rejuvenated with a newfound vitality. Mind transfer, necro-puppeteer, Eno murmured. The cat's vibrant green eyes gleamed with determination. She may not have had the bear's raw power, but her new form granted her agility and speed. Her claws scraped against the ground, eager to take down Utakata's clones. Utakata's second tail began to materialize, his chakra slowly increasing. Eno's new form was a flurry of movement, darting through the field of clones. Her movements were fluid, the feline agility and speed aiding her in navigating the swarm of bubble clones. Each swipe of her claws burst a clone into a shower of soap-like fragments. Shikamaru watched from the corner of his eyes, his tiger prowling low to the ground. The elongated shadow, connected to his own, flickered as he adjusted his technique to fit the current situation. With Eno taking care of the clones, he focused on finding the real Utakata. His eyes widened. Eno, he's releasing more of his tailed beast chakra. Be careful. Eno's cat form tensed at Shikamaru's warning, her vibrant green eyes narrowing in concentration. She dodged a clone's attack, her body moving fluidly like water. Her claws extended, slashing across the clone and making it burst into a shower of bubbles. Eno's cat form, agile and swift, weaved through the army of clones, her claws slashing through them with each precise strike. The clone Utakatas popped like fragile soap bubbles, splattering the battlefield with remnants of his technique. But with each clone she eradicated, two more seemed to take its place. Eno's green eyes narrowed in frustration, her body coiled and ready to launch another attack. Raiton, lightning claw, she exclaimed. Chakra condensed around her claws, sparking with electric energy. She lunged forward, her lightning-infused claws tearing through multiple clones at once. The clone Utakatas met their end in bright flashes of electric energy, their bodies sizzling and evaporating into thin air. Despite her fierce assault, Eno wasn't able to make a significant dent in the clone army. She needed a different strategy. Her gaze flickered over to Shikamaru, a silent plea for assistance. Shikamaru, on the other hand, was wrestling with his own problems. His eyes, sharp and focused, darted across the battlefield, studying each clone meticulously. He had noticed that some of Utakata's clones seemed to hold more of his chakra than others. His fingers formed another seal, a strategy forming in his mind. Shadow control, shadow severance, he commanded. Shikamaru's shadow stretched, branching out into multiple tendrils. They slithered across the battlefield, reaching out to the clones that held more chakra. In an instant, the shadows severed the connection between Utakata and his clones. With a soft pop, the clones burst, their forms dissolving into nothingness. Utakata's eyes widened, and his focus shifted from Eno to Shikamaru. He had underestimated Shikamaru's shadow techniques, a mistake he wouldn't repeat. His eyes narrowed, and he readied himself for his next move. But Eno didn't give him that chance. She charged forward, using the distraction Shikamaru provided to her advantage. Her body was a blur of movement, the feline agility allowing her to swiftly navigate the battlefield. Her claws flashed dangerously, each swipe taking down a clone. Jinjutsu, lightning mirage, she called out, her body bursting into an array of electric clones. Her duplicates spread out, their electric forms mirroring her movements. They engaged with Utakata's clones, effectively diverting their attention from the real Eno. Utakata frowned, his gaze following the electric mirages. He couldn't identify the real Eno, her Jinjutsu causing his senses to go haywire. He knew he needed to break the illusion, but he didn't know how. His focus was scattered, his control over his clones faltering. Seizing the moment, Shikamaru called out, shadow control, necromanipulation. With a sudden lunge, his tiger shadow sprang forward. It melded into Utakata's shadow, effectively paralyzing him. Utakata grunted, his body frozen in place. He could feel the icy tendrils of Shikamaru's shadow technique curl around him, locking him in place. His third tail started to form, his desperation driving him to release more of his tailed beast's chakra. Eno broke her Jinjutsu, her electric clones merging back into her form. She stood her ground, her cat form tensed and ready for action. Her eyes locked onto Utakata, and a determined smile spread across her face. Chapter 106, Choji and Asuma vs. Rashi. A ghostly tail swayed behind Rashi, the crimson aura of his foretails enveloping him. He looked larger, more menacing, his chakra flaring up like an inferno. His eyes burned with an unholy light as he stared down at his opponents, a growl rippling from his throat. Opposite him, Choji and Asuma stood, their eyes reflecting the fiery glow of Rashi's monstrous form. The silence hung heavy in the air, the tension palpable, each of them waiting for the other to make a move. Choji's muscles tightened under his skin, his veins pulsing with yang energy. It flowed through him, strengthening his body, amplifying his speed, making him nearly impervious. Yang release, Titan's physique, he called out again, reinforcing his technique. Unlike his butterfly mode, this technique didn't cause him to enlarge, but it imbued him with the same level of raw power, if not more. Ready, Choji? Asuma's voice was calm, a sharp contrast to the brewing storm. He twirled his trenched knives, the gleaming edges humming through the air. Choji nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. Let's do this, Asuma-sensei. Rashi moved first, his lava-encrusted fists slamming down where Asuma and Choji stood moments ago. The ground shuddered under the impact, molten lava splattering in all directions. Choji moved quickly, his enhanced speed evident as he launched himself at Rashi. His fist collided with Rashi's fiery form, the impact sending a shockwave through the battlefield. Rashi growled, the sound echoing off the rocky terrain, but he remained unmoved. Asuma, on the other hand, chose a different approach. He moved with a fluid grace, each step measured, each strike calculated. His trenched knives danced in his hands, whistling through the air as he attacked Rashi from a distance. Futon, wind blade, he called, the air around his knives rippling as he sent a series of wind-enhanced slices towards Rashi. Rashi, however, was prepared. His hands moved in a swift flurry of motion. Yoton, lava wall. A thick wall of molten rock emerged, effectively blocking Asuma's attack. Choji took advantage of the distraction, his fist hammering down on Rashi's flank. The ground beneath them cracked under the force of Choji's strike, and for the first time, Rashi staggered. The monstrous Jinchuriki growled, his eyes glowing dangerously. He spun around, his tail lashing out towards Choji. The Akimichi barely managed to dodge, his muscular form rolling away from the deadly whip. From the corner of his eye, Choji saw Asuma move again. His former sensei didn't waste a single moment, pushing off the ground to launch himself into the air. Futon, great wind scythe. Asuma's voice echoed as he swung his trenched knives, a large gust of wind whirling towards Rashi. This time, Rashi had little time to react. The gust struck him full force, forcing him to dig his heels into the earth. Yet, even as he slid back, he retaliated. Katon, flame bullet. Rashi expelled a jet of flame towards Asuma, but the Jonin was already flipping away, avoiding the searing flames by a hair's breadth. Meanwhile, Choji charged once again, his muscles coiling, then releasing. Human boulder, he roared, his body spinning with a momentum that made the air around him vibrate. Rashi, in the midst of his focus on Asuma, only had a fraction of a second to react to the incoming threat. He moved to form a lava wall, but the immense speed and power of Choji's human boulder attack sent him sprawling, the very earth trembling as he was knocked off his feet. Choji, coming to a stop, quickly took advantage of Rashi's temporary disorientation. He launched himself forward, his fists charged with his chakra. Titan punch, he roared, his fists connecting with Rashi's body, each hit landing with the force of a wrecking ball. Rashi snarled, his body sliding back from the impact. However, he was quick to retaliate, his fists encased in a shell of hardened lava. Yoton, molten fists. His punches flew at Choji, a flurry of heated fury. Choji deflected, his arms moving in a blur to ward off Rashi's assault. He felt the intense heat against his skin, but his titan's physique held strong, his skin not so much as smoldering under the searing touch. In the corner of his vision, he saw Asuma moving. The Jonin was relentless, his trench knives glinting under the artificial light of Rashi's flaming aura. "Futon, wind scythe!" Asuma called, his wind-enhanced strikes slicing through the air. Rashi grunted as the blades of wind struck him. He retaliated, his fiery chakra flaring up. Keton, flame burst! A wall of fire erupted from his body, pushing back Asuma and creating distance between them. Asuma landed nimbly, the heat from Rashi's flames licking at his flak jacket. His eyes were focused, trench knives poised and ready. "Choji, now!" he called. With a powerful grunt, Choji drew on the reserves of his yang chakra, his body humming with the energy. He charged, his form blurring from the immense speed. "Human bullet tank," he bellowed, his enhanced speed and power propelling him towards Rashi. The impact was colossal. Rashi, unable to react in time, was sent flying back, crashing through several rock formations. Choji uncurled, standing his ground, chest heaving but eyes alight with fierce determination. Rashi groaned, slowly pulling himself from the wreckage. His gaze turned to Choji, a glint of respect passing through his fiery eyes. He roared, the sound echoing through the battlefield, his chakra flaring brighter. He was far from defeated. In the brief respite, Asuma darted forward. His trench knives glinted ominously as he lunged towards Rashi. "Futon, wind slicer!" He sliced through the air, the sharp wind blasts spiraling towards the Jinchuriki. Rashi barely had time to raise another lava wall before Asuma's attack struck, the intense gusts of wind colliding with the molten barrier. Amidst the steam and smoke, Asuma continued his relentless assault, the whirlwind of his futon jutsu tearing through the battlefield. All the while, Choji prepared for his next move. His heart pounded in his chest, the yang chakra thrumming in his veins. His gaze was locked onto Rashi, his fists clenched at his sides. He was ready for the next round, ready to push his limits further to protect what he held dear. He was an Akimichi, and he would not back down. Rashi grunted, staggering as he tried to find his footing amidst the onslaught from Asuma's futon jutsu. His body radiated heat as he worked to replenish the chakra he had spent. He was not about to surrender, not when he still had so much fight left in him. His eyes flicked towards the sky, then closed in deep concentration. "Three tails," he roared. The intensity of his chakra soared, creating an oppressive atmosphere that hung heavy over the battlefield. The Jinchuriki's form expanded, three ghostly tails manifesting behind him. The ground quaked as Rashi's transformation completed, his body cloaked in a molten shroud. Choji and Asuma stood their ground, watching as Rashi's transformation brought a new level of heat and danger to the battlefield. The increasing intensity of his chakra was palpable, but they did not falter. They knew what was at stake, and they were prepared to give everything to protect their village. Asuma looked at Choji, his eyes serious. "Ready, Choji?" he asked, his voice steady. Choji nodded, clenching his fists. "Ready." With that, they charged. Asuma led the assault, his trench knives cutting through the heated air. "Futon, wind blade!" He launched a barrage of slicing dust towards Rashi, the sharp winds intending to carve through his lava armor. Rashi retaliated, swinging one of his lava-encrusted tails. "Yoton, lava whip!" The molten appendage cut through the air, intercepting Asuma's wind blades and creating a shower of sparks and ash. But the duo's teamwork didn't falter. As Asuma engaged Rashi's attention, Choji took his position. He charged his chakra, the energy vibrating around him. "Yang release, Titan's pummel," he declared. His fists glowed with raw energy, their strength enhanced beyond their limits. With a battle cry, Choji launched forward, his fists hammering down on Rashi's molten defense. The force of each blow sent tremors through the battlefield, chipping away at the lava encasing Rashi. Rashi roared, trying to swipe at Choji with his tails, but Asuma intercepted, his wind jutsu slicing through the air to ward off the molten tails. "Choji, now!" Asuma yelled, his voice cutting through the sounds of battle. Drawing on the last of his yang chakra, Choji clenched his fists tightly. Final blow, Titan's hammer. His fists came down, the strength of his attack enhanced by his unwavering willpower. The resulting impact was earth-shattering. Rashi's molten armor shattered under the force, the Jinchuriki sent crashing to the ground. His three tails flickered and vanished, his transformation receding. The dust settled, revealing the hulking figure of Choji standing victorious over the defeated Rashi. His breathing was heavy, his body drenched in sweat, but his expression was one of pure determination. Asuma approached, placing a hand on Choji's shoulder. "Good work, Choji," he praised, a genuine smile on his face. With Rashi defeated, the duo could finally take a breather. They had succeeded in their mission. They had prevented the Jinchuriki from joining the Akatsuki. And most importantly, they had protected their village and their friends. The battle was over, but the memory of their victory would forever remain etched in their hearts. Chapter 107, Team 8 vs. Kagaya Clan. Team 8, comprised of Shino, Kiba, and Sakura, moved in unison under Kurenai's watchful eye. Their opponents were resurrected members of the Kagaya clan, their bodies manipulated like marionettes under Orochimaru's command. Some of them were already displaying their bone manipulation jutsu, skeletal protrusions forming deadly weapons under their command. "I remember reading about these guys," Kiba muttered, grimacing at the sight of the Kagaya clan members. "They're really going to use their bones as weapons?" "Focus, Kiba," Shino's voice was low, calm despite the situation. "Remember, our teamwork will be our advantage." Sakura, her fists tightly clenched, nodded. "Let's do this," she said, a steely determination in her voice. Their advance was halted as one of the Kagaya members, his body strangely distorted, stepped forward. His bones protruded from his skin like a grotesque suit of armor. "So," he began, his voice hollow and unnatural, "you're the ones we'll be fighting?" "Indeed, it seems so," Shino replied, his sunglasses reflecting the eerie skeletal figure before them. "It's regrettable that you've been forced into this situation. Think we'll be scared?" Kiba snarled, Akamaru growling at his side. The Kagaya warrior laughed, a hollow sound. "Scared? No, my young adversary. Pity. We have been reduced to tools of war, resurrected to cause chaos. I pity you." Kurenai, watching from the sidelines, murmured quietly. "Be careful. Jinjutsu can be used for more than visual illusions." The skeletal warrior cackled again, and in the blink of an eye, his bones shifted. His form blurred, and then he was charging towards them, bones gleaming like swords in the harsh light. Sakura stepped forward, her chakra-laced fists raised in defense. "Watch out," shouted a second Kagaya member, his voice filled with desperation. "The dance of the willow." Shino, having understood the warning, was quick to react. "Kiba, flank." "Sakura, prepare for an assault." With precision, Kiba directed Akamaru into a spinning attack, a flurry of fur and fangs known as Getsuga. The dog beast tore into the skeletal warrior, giving Sakura an opening. She charged in, her punch empowered with chakra, connecting with the Kagaya warrior's ribcage. Cherry blossom impact. Her voice rang through the battlefield. Her attack sent the Kagaya warrior stumbling back, but it wasn't enough to bring him down. He retaliated, forming a spear from his forearm, but Shino was ready. From his sleeves, a swarm of insects surged forth, forming a protective barrier around his teammates. Hidden Jutsu, Insect Sphere. The insects, attracted by the chakra the Kagaya member was giving off, swarmed over him, biting and gnawing, forcing him to retract his attack. "Kiba, another pass," Shino called, and Kiba, understanding, nodded. "Got it!" Kiba said, Akamaru yipping in agreement as they lunged forward for another round of Getsuga. Sakura, not one to be outdone, channeled her chakra once more, a white aura surrounding her clenched fists. "I'm not finished yet." She moved like a streak of pink lightning, slamming into the Kagaya warrior with another powerful punch. Cherry Blossom Clash. Her blows sent the Kagaya members skidding backward, creating distance for Shino's next move. He clasped his hands together, forming the tiger sign. Ninjutsu, Insect Torrent. A massive wave of insects erupted from the ground, swarming towards the Kagaya member. In that moment, another Kagaya warrior, his voice a desperate whisper, shouted, "Watch for the counterattack." The web expanded as it traveled, enveloping the Kagaya clan member in its hold. His movements became more constricted as the web tightened around him, the pulsating chakra strands acting as chains. As the Kagaya clan member struggled, Shino moved in for the finishing blow. His sword-like forearms gleamed ominously under the harsh sunlight as he charged at his opponent, the buzz of his insect wings adding a menacing hum to the battlefield's cacophony. Dance of the Seedling Fern. A Kagaya member warned in a pained whisper. Shino veered away from the impaled Kagaya warrior, his compound eyes zeroing in on the new attacker. Just in time, as an array of bone spikes erupted from the ground where he'd been standing. Shino had become a creature of chitin and chakra. He darted into the air, his insect wings carrying him safely above the bone forest. His compound eyes didn't miss a beat as they scanned the battlefield, evaluating the situation and strategizing the next move. The battle continued to rage. As Shino flitted through the battlefield, a predatory insect maneuvering among the deadly bone spikes, he signaled Kiba and Sakura, his compound eyes never missing a beat. "Kiba, Sakura, initiate sealing arts," he called out, his voice as cold and emotionless as ever, yet filled with an underlying urgency. Kiba nodded, his hand already darting to a scroll strapped to his side. Sealing art, spiraling vortex. He unrolled the scroll, revealing an intricate sealing pattern, and slammed his hand on it. A churning vortex of chakra sprung from the scroll, sucking in the defeated Kagaya clan members, banishing them back to the afterlife. Akamaru, by his side, growled in unison, amplifying the sealing jutsu with his own chakra. Simultaneously, Sakura was already preparing her own sealing jutsu. She formed a series of hand signs, her fingers moving with speed and precision, a soft glow enveloping her hands. Sealing art, celestial prison, she chanted, thrusting her palm onto the ground. A dome of shimmering chakra formed around the disoriented Kagaya clan member, trapping him within. On the sidelines, Kurenai was not idly watching. She had her own role to play in this battle. She deftly formed hand signs, her eyes shining with the reflection of the Jinjutsu she was about to cast. Jinjutsu, Infinite Embrace. With a swift motion, she cast her Jinjutsu on the battlefield. An illusory field of endless cherry blossoms appeared around the Kagaya members, disorienting them, making it easier for her team to seal them away. As Kurenai kept a close watch on the battlefield, she couldn't help but marvel at Shino's transformation. The typically quiet and introspective member of their team had turned into a fierce, deadly force. He was unrecognizable, yet he still held onto the essence of who he was. The responsibility of leading the team, combined with the symbiotic bond he shared with his insects, had spurred his growth. As the battlefield evolved, so did the tactics of Team 8. Shino had taken the lead, his transformation lending him a lethal edge. The Aburame danced in the sky, a choreography of chitin and chakra, his compound eyes capturing every minuscule detail. But his team members were not idling either, each had a crucial role to play. As Shino dodged a series of bone spikes, he called out to his companions, "Sakura, Kiba, let's move to the next phase." Kiba and Akamaru, already on the move, swiftly changed directions in response to Shino's command. With a growl from Akamaru, they started to gather their chakra. Fong over Fong, Gale Palm. Kiba roared, spinning furiously with Akamaru, creating a powerful gust that scattered the Kagaya clan members. On the other side of the battlefield, Sakura had been waiting for her turn. Her eyes were steady, a flame burning in them. "I'm ready," she responded to Shino's command, weaving hand signs at an astonishing speed. Earth Release, Rock Pillar Prison. The ground rumbled beneath her, as several rock pillars rose from the ground, encircling a few of the Kagaya clan members, imprisoning them. While the field of battle was alive with the sounds of combat, a deafening silence descended in Kurenai's vicinity. She raised her hands, the symbols for her jutsu flowing from her fingers. Jinjutsu, infinite embrace, she called, her voice a whisper amidst the chaos. With exemplary teamwork, Team 8 sealed every single Kagaya clan remnant and ended the battle. And just as they predicted, the skeletal figure retaliated with Dance of the Larch, bones swirling around him like a tornado, shredding the insects and forcing Team 8 to retreat. As the whirlwind of bones cleared, Team 8 regrouped, each member breathing heavily. The Kagaya warriors, manipulated like puppets by Orochimaru's sinister jutsu, stood waiting, their expressions blank, their bodies hollow shells of their former selves. "Sakura, get ready for my signal," Kiba said, Akamaru growling lowly at his side. "Shino, I'm going to need your bugs to buy us some time." Despite the grim situation, Sakura nodded firmly, determination burning in her eyes. "We got this." On the other side of the field, a Kagaya clan member gave an almost imperceptible nod to Shino, his eyes filled with quiet sorrow. "My attack is coming. Dance of the Clematis, be careful." Shino acknowledged the warning with a curt nod. "Kiba, now!" he commanded, and the world around them seemed to slow as Kiba and Akamaru charged forward. The Kagaya warrior countered with a large, drill-like bone extending from his palm, aiming straight at Kiba. "Wolf Fong over Fong!" Kiba roared, and he and Akamaru spiraled around the Kagaya warrior, their forms a blur as they moved. They slashed at the Kagaya member, creating an opening for Sakura to strike. As the Kagaya member staggered, another voice whispered from the line of Kagaya warriors. "Incoming! Brace yourselves!" "Shino!" Sakura yelled, and the Aburame clan member acted instantly. "Insect jamming technique," he shouted, and a swarm of Kakachu beetles erupted from his sleeves, filling the air and creating a dense fog. This cloud of insects impaired the vision of their opponents and allowed Team 8 a momentary respite. Sakura moved swiftly, chakra building within her fists. Chakra-enhanced strength, she roared, rushing forward and delivering a punishing blow to the Kagaya warrior. The force of her attack was so strong that it created a shockwave, disrupting the Kagaya warrior's stance. From the sidelines, Kurenai, her eyes sharp, quickly formed hand signs, the classic illusion technique Jinjutsu, flower petal escape. In a flurry of cherry blossoms, Team 8 seemed to vanish and reappear in different locations, disorienting the Kagaya warriors. While the Kagaya warriors were distracted, Shino capitalized on the opportunity. Hidden Jutsu, Beetle Sphere. He extended his arms, summoning a swarm of beetles that engulfed the Kagaya warrior. The insects bit and gnawed, draining his chakra. Kiba and Akamaru were on the move again, their eyes locked on their target. "Dual-piercing Fong!" They shouted in unison, charging towards the Kagaya warrior with unparalleled speed and ferocity. Simultaneously, Sakura readied her next attack. Her fists glowed with a brilliant white chakra. Cherry Blossom Impact. Her voice echoed across the battlefield, and with a swift, powerful strike, she sent the Kagaya warrior crashing into the ground. Despite their fierce attacks, the Kagaya warriors refused to stay down. A voice called out, alerting them to the counterattack. "Watch out for Dance of the Seedling Fern." Kurenai's voice rang out, calm amidst the chaos. "Stay focused." Shino, Kiba, Sakura prepare for a range attack. Chapter 108, Open Your Wings and Soar. Team 8 listened to Kurenai's instructions, readying themselves for the onslaught. As the Kagaya warrior initiated the Dance of the Seedling Fern, bones erupted from the ground like a forest of deadly spikes. The battlefield was a blur of motion, the stillness of the air cut by the sounds of combat. Shino, Kiba, and Sakura, under the guidance of Kurenai, fought against the resurrected Kagaya clan members with everything they had. Kiba, use Fong over Fong. Sakura, ready for my signal, Shino's calm voice reached his teammates, even amidst the chaotic scene. Kiba, with Akamaru by his side, spun into their signature move. Fong over Fong. Their bodies whirled in a cyclone of fur and fangs, bearing down on their skeletal opponents. Meanwhile, Sakura's fists glowed with concentrated chakra. "Ready," she responded, her voice steady, despite the chaotic situation. The Kagaya clan member they were fighting, his body warped by bone manipulation, extended his hand, a bone spear forming. "Prepare for the dance of the larch," he said, his voice empty and lifeless. A second Kagaya member, in a quiet voice full of regret, whispered, "Brace yourselves. He's fast." Shino nodded his acknowledgement. "Thank you," he said, before shouting, "Now, Sakura." Sakura charged forward, her fists ablaze with chakra. Chakra-enhanced strength, she shouted, slamming her fist into the Kagaya member. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the air, knocking their opponent off balance. Simultaneously, Kiba and Akamaru descended from their whirlwind, ripping into the Kagaya member with their dual attack. Dual piercing Fong. However, the Kagaya clan member was quick to recover. "Dance of the Clematis," he shouted, his voice echoing ominously. The ground around him erupted in a forest of bone spikes, forcing Team 8 to scatter. Seeing the rapidly escalating situation, Shino had an idea. He glanced over to Koushin, who had developed his new technique, insect fusion, chakra symbiosis. Koushin gave him a nod, and Shino knew what he had to do. He needed to use that technique. Shino took a deep breath and focused on his insects, the creatures buzzing under his skin in response. "Insect fusion, chakra symbiosis," he whispered, feeling the sudden surge of energy as his insects began to share their chakra with him. His body began to transform, bug-like traits appearing, wings sprouted from his back, his eyes morphed into a compound form, and his arms sharpened into sword-like limbs. As the transformation completed, Shino felt the newfound abilities coursing through him. His senses were heightened, and his speed increased dramatically. He could feel the extra power in his chakra-infused webs, and the diverse range of insect species he could now control felt like an army at his command. Kurenai watched in silent awe from the sidelines, her eyes widening in surprise at Shino's transformation. She saw the resolve in his eyes and knew that the tide of the battle was about to change. Shino was no longer a man on the battlefield, he was now a formidable force of nature, a lethal weapon. He moved with such speed and precision that it was almost impossible to track his movements. In one moment, he was on the ground, and in the next, he was soaring in the air, his insect wings carrying him above the battlefield. One of the Kagaya clan members, his voice full of regret, whispered, "He's preparing Dance of the Seedling Fern." Shino nodded in acknowledgement, his compound eyes scanning the battlefield. As the Kagaya member initiated the jutsu, a forest of bone spikes erupted from the ground. However, Shino was ready. His wings flapped furiously, propelling him high above the deadly spikes. Shino scanned the battlefield from above, his heightened senses picking up every minute detail. The Kagaya clan member who had unleashed the Dance of the Seedling Fern was already preparing for another jutsu, his body contorting as he manipulated his bones. "Incoming!" "Dance of the Clematis," another Kagaya member warned in a whisper, his eyes meeting Shino's with a silent plea for mercy. With an appreciative nod, Shino moved. He dropped from the sky, his sword-like arms slashing through the air. His speed was almost blinding as he sliced through the bone forest, each strike precise and deadly. Shino, his form altered by the insect fusion, chakra symbiosis, stood poised to meet the incoming assault. As he stood tall, the Kagaya clan member morphed his body once more, bone protruding grotesquely from his skin. "Dance of the Clematis," he announced, his voice echoing hollowly in the crisp air. Yet, even before the attack was announced, another Kagaya member had murmured it in a hushed voice. "Dance of the Clematis," he whispered, regret-laden in his tone. Shino was grateful for their unwillingness to be pawns in Orochimaru's cruel game, using this information to his advantage. "Understood," he replied, his voice cool and even, but his compound eyes gleamed with a rare intensity. The Kagaya clan member charged, his bone drill extended, aiming to impale Shino. Yet the Aburame was not where he used to be. His speed, augmented by the chakra symbiosis with his insects, rendered him a blur on the battlefield, evading the attack effortlessly. The Kagaya clan member barely had time to retract his bone drill before Shino was upon him. Jutsu, Beetle Barrage. Shino's voice rang out. A swarm of beetles, each buzzing with vibrant chakra, erupted from his wings and swarmed the Kagaya clan member, biting and gnawing at his flesh, consuming his chakra. The Kagaya clan member stumbled back, swatting at the beetles, but they were relentless. He attempted to form a bone shield from his forearm, but his movements were slow, sluggish. His chakra was being drained, his body weakening. Shino did not let up. Channeling his shared chakra with his insects, he wove a web between his fingers, his movements swift and precise. The web shimmered with chakra, each strand pulsating with energy. Jutsu, Chakra Web, he announced, throwing the web towards the Kagaya clan member. The web expanded as it traveled, enveloping the Kagaya clan member in its hold. His movements became more constricted as the web tightened around him, the pulsating chakra strands acting as chains. As the Kagaya clan member struggled, Shino moved in for the finishing blow. His sword-like forearms gleamed ominously under the harsh sunlight as he charged at his opponent, the buzz of his insect wings adding a menacing hum to the battlefield's cacophony. Dance of the Seedling Fern. A Kagaya member warned in a pained whisper. Shino veered away from the impaled Kagaya warrior, his compound eyes zeroing in on the new attacker. Just in time, as an array of bone spikes erupted from the ground where he'd been standing. Shino had become a creature of chitin and chakra. He darted into the air, his insect wings carrying him safely above the bone forest. His compound eyes didn't miss a beat as they scanned the battlefield, evaluating the situation and strategizing the next move. The battle continued to rage. As Shino flitted through the battlefield, a predatory insect maneuvering among the deadly bone spikes, he signaled Kiba and Sakura, his compound eyes never missing a beat. Kiba, Sakura, initiate sealing arts, he called out, his voice as cold and emotionless as ever, yet filled with an underlying urgency. Kiba nodded, his hand already darting to a scroll strapped to his side. Sealing art, spiraling vortex. He unrolled the scroll, revealing an intricate sealing pattern, and slammed his hand on it. A churning vortex of chakra sprung from the scroll, sucking in the defeated Kagaya clan members, banishing them back to the afterlife. Akamaru, by his side, growled in unison, amplifying the sealing jutsu with his own chakra. Simultaneously, Sakura was already preparing her own sealing jutsu. She formed a series of hand signs, her fingers moving with speed and precision, a soft glow enveloping her hands. Sealing art, celestial prison, she chanted, thrusting her palm onto the ground. A dome of shimmering chakra formed around the disoriented Kagaya clan member, trapping him within. On the sidelines, Kurenai was not idly watching. She had her own role to play in this battle. She deftly formed hand signs, her eyes shining with the reflection of the Jinjutsu she was about to cast. Jinjutsu, Infinite Embrace. With a swift motion, she cast her Jinjutsu on the battlefield. An illusory field of endless cherry blossoms appeared around the Kagaya members, disorienting them, making it easier for her team to seal them away. As Kurenai kept a close watch on the battlefield, she couldn't help but marvel at Shino's transformation. The typically quiet and introspective member of their team had turned into a fierce, deadly force. He was unrecognizable, yet he still held onto the essence of who he was. The responsibility of leading the team, combined with the symbiotic bond he shared with his insects, had spurred his growth. As the battlefield evolved, so did the tactics of Team 8. Shino had taken the lead, his transformation lending him a lethal edge. The Aburame danced in the sky, a choreography of chitin and chakra, his compound eyes capturing every minuscule detail. But his team members were not idling either, each had a crucial role to play. As Shino dodged a series of bone spikes, he called out to his companions, Sakura, Kiba, let's move to the next phase. Kiba and Akamaru, already on the move, swiftly changed directions in response to Shino's command. With a growl from Akamaru, they started to gather their chakra. Fong over Fong, Gale Palm. Kiba roared, spinning furiously with Akamaru, creating a powerful gust that scattered the Kagaya clan members. On the other side of the battlefield, Sakura had been waiting for her turn. Her eyes were steady, a flame burning in them. "I'm ready," she responded to Shino's command, weaving hand signs at an astonishing speed. Earth release, rock pillar prison. The ground rumbled beneath her, as several rock pillars rose from the ground, encircling a few of the Kagaya clan members, imprisoning them. While the field of battle was alive with the sounds of combat, a deafening silence descended in Kurena's vicinity. She raised her hands, the symbols for her jutsu flowing from her fingers. "Jinjutsu, infinite embrace," she called, her voice a whisper amidst the chaos. With exemplary teamwork, Team 8 sealed every single Kagaya clan remnant and ended the battle. Chapter 109, Hinata's Ice Release. Kakashi-sensei, Koushin began, his eyes flickering over the looming threat of Deidara and Sasori. "Would you mind lending Naruto and Hinata your support in their fight?" Kakashi turned to regard his student, the weight of his gaze concealed behind the seriousness etched onto his face. "I don't mind, Koushin," he replied, the corners of his mouth quirking upward in a small, reassuring smile. "Just be careful with Jozu, all right?" "No promises, sensei," Koushin shot back, an edge of playful bravado coloring his words. His eyes, however, revealed the seriousness behind his words. Kakashi merely nodded in response before shifting his focus to Naruto and Hinata. "You two ready?" he asked, his gaze firm and steady. Hinata nodded, her usually shy demeanor replaced by a quiet determination. "Yes, Kakashi-sensei. I'll do my best." Naruto, on the other hand, shot Kakashi a confident grin. "Ready as I'll ever be, sensei," he said. "Let's take these guys down." Kakashi let out a huff of amusement, a faint spark of pride visible in his gaze. "That's the spirit," he affirmed before turning to face their adversaries. "Deidara, Sasori, it's time we ended this." Sasori, the puppet master of the Akatsuki, tilted his head at Kakashi's proclamation, an air of indifference radiating from him. "And here I thought we'd have more time to play," he mused, his voice as cold as his dead eyes. Deidara scoffed at his companion's words, his own eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Playtime's over, yeah," he sneered, his hands already molding a clay bird. "It's showtime." The dust of the battlefield swirled around the four combatants, tinting the air a harsh ochre. Naruto planted his feet into the ground, his fingers curled into tight fists at his sides. His chakra flared around him, a visible wind encircling him as he shifted into wind chakra mode. Hinata stood beside him, her Byakugan activated, and the veins around her eyes standing out in stark relief. An icy mist coiled around her, a testament to her mastery over the ice release jutsu. She remained silent, her attention focused on the enemy. Kakashi took the front, his posture relaxed but his gaze alert, bearing the seriousness that only a veteran of numerous battles would have. His hands moved quickly, forming seals as he prepared for the attack. Sasori and Deidara stood unmoving on the other end of the field, the former an image of stoic calm, while the latter was a contrast of uncontained enthusiasm. Deidara's hands worked tirelessly, molding a clay bird, his fingers dancing over the explosive matter with a craftsman's care. "Katon, great fireball jutsu!" Naruto shouted, his voice booming over the dusty landscape. He inhaled deeply, his cheeks puffing out before he exhaled a monstrous ball of fire. The flames hurtled towards Deidara, a meteor bathed in furious red and orange. Deidara sneered, swiftly placing the clay bird in front of him. "C2 Dragon!" The clay creation exploded into life, shielding Deidara from the fireball, taking the brunt of the fiery jutsu and disintegrating into a fine dust. Meanwhile, Hinata was in action, rushing towards Sasori. Her palms glowed, the frosty aura of the ice release technique dancing around her hands. "Hakusho!" She struck forward, sending waves of freezing chakra towards Sasori. The puppet master was sent skidding backward but remained unharmed, his puppet form immune to the usual effects of the gentle fist. Deidara squinted through the dissipating smoke, watching Naruto with a vindictive grin. A fiery show, yeah, he jeered, busying himself with molding more clay. Kakashi swiftly moved between Naruto and Deidara, his hands a blur as he formed the seal for lightning release. Raiton, lightning beast running technique. A serpentine form of raw electricity coalesced around his arm, its eyes glowing with a fierce brightness that matched the intensity in Kakashi's own gaze. Across the battlefield, Hinata remained undeterred, her gaze fixed on Sasori. Her hands moved, the chilling aura around her intensifying. Higher no Jutsu, ice prison technique. She thrust her palm onto the ground, and a wave of frost rushed towards Sasori, threatening to ensnare him in a cage of ice. But the puppet master proved elusive. The wooden body he inhabited made an eerie clattering sound as it split into multiple parts, evading Hinata's ice prison and regrouping a few meters away. A devilish smirk played on his wooden lips. A dance of ice, how quaint. Deidara's laughter echoed across the field as Kakashi charged towards him, the electric beast rearing and hissing. The Akatsuki member was quick to respond, already hurling another clay creation. C3. The clay model detonated midair, the explosion dwarfing the previous one, forcing Kakashi to dispel his jutsu and shield himself with Earth Release, Earth-style wall. Simultaneously, Naruto lunged towards Sasori, his eyes hardened with determination. Sasori, we'll get you out of this. His fingers curled around a sphere of chakra, the wind violently swirling around it. Futon, Raisin Shuriken, he cried out, releasing the spiraling shuriken. Sasori's wooden body creaked ominously, and in response to Naruto's attack, he released his 100-puppet army. Wooden bodies fanned out, intercepting the Raisin Shuriken, their forms shattered under the jutsu's destructive power. At the same time, Hinata had shifted her focus back to Deidara, her frosty palms pulsating with chakra. Byakugan! She exclaimed, her vision enhancing, the veins around her eyes bulging out starkly. Gentle step twin lion fists. Two roaring lion-shaped auras formed around her hands, their icy mist mingling with the raw chakra. She dashed toward Deidara, her form a blur. Deidara clicked his tongue, trying to mold more explosive clay, but Hinata was faster. The twin lions collided with his form, and a shockwave of energy rippled across the battlefield. Deidara was sent sprawling back, but he quickly recovered, laughing maniacally. Kakashi exchanged a quick glance with Naruto and Hinata, noting their resolve. Remember, he warned, we have to seal them. Let's end this swiftly. Naruto took a deep breath, the air tasting dry in his mouth. His chakra swirled around him, a miniature tempest fueled by his determination. Katon, Rasen Shield. A swirling sphere of fire and wind formed around him, the fiery tendrils licking the air with fervor. Chapter 110, Sealed. At the same time, Hinata's icy gaze focused on Deidara. The ground beneath her feet crackled with frost as she prepared to launch her attack. Hayaton, Tsumatai Kumo. Icy webs shot out from her palms, aiming to ensnare Deidara in their chilling grasp. Deidara, unfazed by the onslaught, chuckled. You think you can trap me, yeah? He threw an explosive clay spider towards Hinata's icy webs, the resulting explosion disrupting her jutsu and sending icy shards scattering. Meanwhile, Kakashi faced Sasori, his eyes hardened. He formed the seal for a jutsu he'd not used in years. Doton, Earth Dragon Bomb. A massive earthen dragon erupted from the ground, its gaping maw filled with a sphere of concentrated rock and chakra. Sasori regarded the beast with an eerie calm. You've certainly improved, he commented, his wooden fingers twirling, manipulating chakra strings to send a barrage of puppets at the dragon. As the puppets clashed with the earth dragon, Naruto redirected his fiery shield, rushing towards Sasori. His heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm of determination. Sasori! You don't belong with them. He raised his hand, a sphere of churning wind and fire resting in his palm. Katon, Rasengan. Sasori's wooden form fragmented, narrowly evading Naruto's blazing Rasengan. Naruto, he said, his voice flat, my fate was sealed long ago. While Naruto grappled with Sasori, Kakashi moved to assist Hinata against Deidara. Suiton, Water Dragon Bullet Technique. A swirling water dragon roared into existence, its roar echoing through the battlefield as it rushed towards Deidara. Deidara smirked, his hands molding a clay bird. "You won't get me that easily." The clay bird flew towards the water dragon, detonating on contact and sending a spray of water and clay debris over the battlefield. Hinata squinted through the mist, her Byakugan piercing the hazy battlefield. Wind style, Kaze no Yaiba. Blades of wind formed around her, spiraling with her frosty chakra. She lunged towards Deidara, her lion auras roaring with determination. Deidara evaded with a laugh, but was promptly cut short by Naruto's sudden intervention. Wind Jutsu, Rasen Senbin. Hundreds of wind-infused needles shot out from Naruto's form, forcing Deidara on the defensive. Simultaneously, Kakashi and Sasori were locked in a fierce tug-of-war. Kakashi, gripping the chakra strings of Sasori's puppets, struggled to turn them against their master. His fingers moved with precise grace, his eyes a picture of intense focus. Sasori resisted, his own fingers dancing over the chakra strings. "Impressive, Kakashi, but these puppets are mine," he asserted, a wooden smirk playing on his lips. Naruto turned back to Sasori, his expression resolute. He exhaled, his chakra swirling more violently around him. Wind style, Raisin Shuriken. Naruto's voice echoed through the battlefield, the cyclone-like shuriken in his hand spinning furiously. With a mighty heave, he flung it towards Sasori. Sasori's wooden form maneuvered to dodge, but was caught off guard by Hinata's sudden intervention. Hayaton, Hyoga Siren. A blasting stream of icy wind shot out from her palms, freezing the ground and slowing Sasori's movements. The Raisin Shuriken hit, splintering Sasori's wooden form into shards, but the puppet master swiftly pulled himself back together, Edo Tensei regenerating his form. "Persistent, aren't you?" he sneered, his chakra strings pulling an army of puppets from the ground. Meanwhile, Kakashi and Deidara were locked in a dance of offense and defense. Deidara molded explosive clay animals, hurling them at Kakashi, who deftly countered with a variety of elemental jutsu. "Doton, mud wall," he called, forming a protective wall to shield from an explosion. Deidara grinned wildly through the smoke, another clay creation at the ready. "You can't hide, yeah." His hand shot forward, sending a clay centipede burrowing towards Kakashi. Kakashi swiftly countered, his hands forming a seal. Raiton, lightning beast running technique. His hand extended forward, the shape of a lightning beast lunging towards the incoming clay creature. The explosion lit up the battlefield, the deafening boom shaking the very earth. Naruto, noticing Kakashi's struggle, left Sasori to Hinata and rushed to assist his former sensei. He mustered his chakra, a spiraling sphere forming in his palm. Katon, Rasen Shield. He thrust the fiery sphere forward, forming a shield that absorbed the aftershock of the explosion. Simultaneously, Hinata engaged Sasori. Her palms were icy cold, her chakra shimmering around her. Byakugan. Her eyes glowed intensely, viewing Sasori's chakra strings. She darted forward, her movements a blur. Hakrokujion Sho. She targeted Sasori's strings, attempting to sever his connection to his puppets. Sasori grimaced, his wooden form straining to dodge her icy strikes. He manipulated his puppets, attempting to form a barrier between himself and Hinata. But her icy strikes shattered them, their wooden parts scattering on the battlefield. Naruto and Kakashi stood shoulder to shoulder, their gazes locked on Deidara. Deidara scowled, a piece of clay already in his hands. "C4, Kurura," he proclaimed, releasing a microscopic explosive into the air. Kakashi's gaze hardened, his hands forming seals swiftly. Futon, wind release stream. A powerful gust of wind swirled around them, aiming to blow away the microscopic explosives. Simultaneously, Naruto raised his hand, the wind swirling violently around it. Windjutsu, Rasen Storm. He released a mighty gust of wind towards Deidara, the force pushing the explosives away. Deidara stumbled back, grimacing as he was caught in the storm. Hinata, seeing an opening, focused her chakra, her frosty aura intensifying. Hayaton, ice sealing technique. She sent a wave of freezing chakra towards both Sasori and Deidara, aiming to encase them in solid ice. Sasori and Deidara, caught off guard, were swiftly encased in Hinata's ice, their forms frozen in place. Naruto and Kakashi wasted no time. Fuinjutsu, sealing technique. They both shouted in unison, their hands moving in a series of quick seals. Bright chains of sealing script shot out from their palms, twining around the frozen forms of Deidara and Sasori, aiming to seal their limitless chakra. Their Edo Tensei bodies twitched and strained, but the ice held them fast. The sealing script glowed brighter, wrapping around them more tightly. You think you've won, yeah? Deidara spat, his words barely escaping the encroaching ice. Accept your defeat, Deidara. Sasori, Naruto retorted, his voice echoing across the battlefield, laden with determination and sorrow. It's time you found peace. Sasori's wooden eyes bore into Naruto's, a myriad of unspoken words passing between them before he was entirely enclosed in ice. The sealing chains glowed even brighter, pulsating with energy before everything became still. The only sound that remained was the ragged breathing of the victors and the distant whistling of the wind. Slowly, the ice around Deidara and Sasori started to dissolve, revealing the sealing script completely covering their forms. They stood, silent and immobile, their defiance finally quelled. Naruto approached the frozen forms, his heart heavy. I'm sorry, Sasori, he whispered, reaching out to touch the cold seal. Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, offering silent support. Hinata moved to stand beside them, her icy aura faded, and fatigue evident on her face. We did it, she murmured, looking at the sealed forms of Deidara and Sasori with a somber expression. They had won, but the taste of victory was bittersweet. As they stood there, overlooking their victory, they understood that in the world of shinobi, battles were rarely about triumph. Chapter 111, Koushin vs. Old Enemies. With a battle cry that resonated through the battlefield, Koushin thrust his hands forward, commanding his two lava Atranax to assist the others. The fiery beasts responded instantly, their forms becoming even more intense as they prepared to check where they were needed most. Kakashi, alongside Naruto and Hinata, found himself standing at Koushin's side, watching the display of raw power with mixed awe and determination. Turning towards Kakashi, Koushin flashed his trademark cheeky grin. Keep an eye on Naruto and Hinata, would you? It seems I've got a couple of dates with some old friends. Kakashi nodded, just be careful, Koushin. Koushin simply winked in response, already moving towards his opponents, his form now devoid of the two towering Atranax. Jozu and the other nameless Akatsuki members squared off against Koushin, their eyes reflecting a mixture of anticipation and dread. All right, pretty boys. Koushin barked, his grin growing wider. Ready to feel the burn? His challenge was met with a growl from Jozu, his eyes flaring with resentment. The other Akatsuki members simply glared, silent but undeniably menacing. The tension between them was almost palpable as they prepared to clash. Koushin advanced, the intensity of his lightning chakra mode making his presence feel like a walking storm. Sparks jumped from his fingertips, his electric aura crackling with a hunger for battle. Koushin's eyes were gleaming with determination, his face set into a smirk as he locked onto Jozu and the other Akatsuki members. Raitun, Chidori Nagashi, he declared, sending a wave of electrified chakra rippling around him. The energy spread out, distorting the air as it collided with the fierce wind summoned by the Akatsuki member. Jozu responded instantly, Suitun, Surya no Jutsu. He cast the Water Dragon Bullet technique, the churning waters twisting upwards to form a monstrous dragon. It roared, the sound echoing around them as it flew towards Koushin, its gaping maw threatening to swallow him whole. Meet my flames, water beast! Koushin bellowed, activating his Hellflame Essence Key. His chakra shifted, molding into an inferno that matched the intensity of his lava Atranax. Katon, Gokaku no Jutsu. A massive fireball erupted from Koushin's mouth, blazing towards the water dragon. The two elements met in a violent clash, the searing heat evaporating the water beast. Steam hissed into the atmosphere, obscuring their vision momentarily. Emerging from the cloud, Koushin sprinted towards his opponents, hands coated in the vibrantly glowing Rasengan. Rasengan, Hellflame Surge, he cried out, imbuing his Rasengan with the deadly flames of his Hellflame Essence Key. The wind-using Akatsuki member tried to block his approach, gusts of razor-sharp air ripping towards Koushin, wind-style, kamikaze. However, the fiery Rasengan devoured the winds, its flames growing larger and hotter, propelled by the oxygen-rich gusts. As Koushin neared his opponents, he pushed the swirling orb of fiery Rasengan onto the ground, sending him flying into the air. Jozu, still recovering from his failed water dragon technique, looked up to see Koushin descending, his figure wreathed in light and shadow. Koushin's form, glowing with the lightning chakra mode, arced through the sky. From his vantage point, he could see Jozu and the wind user below, their faces upturned. He twisted his body, using his momentum to direct his descent towards his targets. Twilight Key! Koushin shouted, activating the ability as he fell. Shadows stretched and light bent around him, creating disorienting illusions that made his trajectory unpredictable. Jozu launched a cascade of water needles upwards, the Suetun, Mizurapa targeted at the descending figure. His companion conjured a swirling cyclone, wind-style, Atsugai, aiming to catch Koushin within its fierce winds. Koushin, however, used his Twilight Key to blur his form. He weaved through the water and wind attacks, his body seeming to split and merge, distorting reality. From the corners of their eyes, Jozu and the wind user could see numerous cushions diving towards them, an illusion created by the bending light. Reaching the ground level, Koushin activated his resilience of the Ash Pit Key, absorbing the residual force of the fall and propelling him towards his opponents. His body moved with an unnatural speed and precision, the chakras swirling around him with a ferocious intensity. With a roar, Koushin unleashed his chakra in a lightning-infused punch aimed at the wind user. Raitun, Reiko Kinka. The fist found its mark, sending the Akatsuki member sprawling back. However, Koushin had no time to relish his attack. Jozu retaliated with his own jutsu, Suetun, Mijuan Nabara. Sticky syrup made from water erupted from his mouth, spreading rapidly to engulf Koushin. Using his Doton chakra, Koushin stomped on the ground, Doton, Doriahiki. A wall of earth rose from the ground around him, shielding him from the incoming syrup and trapping it before it could spread any further. Erupting from the earthen enclosure, Koushin met Jozu's glare with a smirk. Ready for round 2, Waterboy? Jozu responded with a surge of water chakra, forming a giant vortex around his body. Suetun, Daibakufu no Jutsu. The powerful waters swirled dangerously, threatening to drown Koushin. But Koushin wasn't deterred. Activating his web weaver key, he began to spin intricate webs of chakra around him, each strand pulsating with potent energy. As the vortex closed in, Koushin channeled his elemental chakra into the web, the fibers of his Rasengan adopting the fierce nature of his Hellflame Essence Key. Rasengan, Inferno Web. With a swift thrust, Koushin sent the burning web spiraling towards the vortex. The moment the flaming web made contact with the water, it exploded in a burst of steam, dispelling the powerful vortex. Having temporarily immobilized Jozu, Koushin turned his attention to the wind user, who had recovered from the lightning punch. A swirl of wind was forming around his fingers, sharp as a blade. Wind style, Kaze Kiri. Anticipating the wind slash, Koushin countered by using the Dominion's grasp key. A surge of dark chakra emanated from him, targeting the wind user's mental fortitude. The Akatsuki member faltered, the wind slash dissipating as his focus wavered. 3 years. Jozu growled, his eyes scrutinizing Koushin's every move. How in the hell did you become this powerful in just 3 years? Hard work and the right motivation, Koushin quipped, his grin never wavering despite the relentless assault from the duo. In response, Jozu marshaled his chakra, combining it with the moisture in the air. His hands wove through a sequence of signs with practiced precision. Suetun, Swishoha. From the swirling vortex of water around him, a massive wave rose and surged towards Koushin. But the shinobi was ready, activating his resilience of the Ash Pit Key. His body hardened against the imminent impact, standing firm as the torrent crashed against him. Riding the wave, the Wind Akatsuki member conjured another deadly gust. Wind style, Kaze no Yaiba. A blade of wind took form in his hand, its edge sharper than any conventional weapon. Koushin, however, was a step ahead. His hands moved rapidly, molding chakra with an urgent intensity. Doton, Doryuten. The ground before him shook and erupted, giving birth to a dragon head made of earth. The force of the jutsu collided with the water wave, disrupting its flow and creating a temporary barrier against the wind blade. "Your move, pretty boy," Koushin teased, his eyes twinkling with a cocky confidence. The wind user snarled, the expression distorting his features grotesquely. Wind style, Daitapa. He inhaled deeply and then expelled a large wind blast, aiming to break through the earth dragon. Koushin reacted instantly. Twilight Key. His figure blurred and disappeared, only to reappear several feet away, seemingly unscathed by the wind assault. The wind user's eyes widened in surprise, but before he could react, Koushin was already on the move. His body was a blur, the electric crackle of the lightning chakra mode dancing around him as he dashed towards his opponent. Raitun, Reiko Kinka. A lightning-infused fist smashed into the wind user, the sound of the impact reverberating across the battlefield. Taken aback, the wind user staggered, but Koushin wasn't done. He quickly formed another Rasengan, this one glowing with an intense heat. Rasengan, Hellflame Surge. He thrust the flaming chakra orb towards his enemy, engulfing him in an inferno. Meanwhile, Jozu had recovered from his failed wave attack. "Koushin, you bastard," he spat, drawing on the limitless chakra of the Edo Tensei. Suetun, Mijue Nabara. A sticky syrup exploded towards Koushin, hoping to catch him off guard. But Koushin was ready. He activated his web weaver key, spinning intricate webs of chakra that intertwined with the syrup, neutralizing its effect. "You're going to have to do better than that, Waterboy." Enraged, Jozu gathered his chakra again. Suetun, Daibakufu no Jutsu. A vortex of water formed around him, threatening to swallow Koushin. Koushin simply smirked. "Bring it on." As the vortex closed in, Koushin channeled his elemental chakra into the web. Rasengan, Inferno Web. The flaming web spiraled towards the vortex, clashing with it in a violent explosion of steam and heat. Taking advantage of the confusion, Koushin used his Dominion's Grasp Key. The wind user, still reeling from the Hellflame surge, staggered as his mental defenses wavered under the onslaught of the dark chakra. "Now you're mine," Koushin declared, charging towards his dazed opponent. He delivered a swift, precise jab to the man's chest. Raitun, Raikuri. A sharp spike of electricity coursed through the wind user, drawing a pained scream. The attack sent him sprawling, but the Edo Tensei's regenerative properties quickly began mending his injuries. Turning his attention back to Jozu, Koushin saw the water user had already regained his composure. "Still standing?" Koushin quipped, a cocky grin playing on his lips. Jozu snarled in response, his eyes filled with renewed determination. "This isn't over, Koushin." As Jozu formed another hand sign, Koushin instinctively activated the Void's Embrace Key. He vanished from sight, becoming completely undetectable. Unfazed, Jozu unleashed his next attack, Suetun, Gashokuzame. From the water beneath their feet, multiple water sharks erupted, blindly thrashing around to locate their invisible target. Koushin, from his vantage of invisibility, observed the scene. A spark of lightning chakra flickered in his palm, growing in size and intensity. Using his elemental chakra, he laced the ball of lightning with his fire chakra, forming a blazing and crackling sphere. Raitun, Hano no Rasengan. Becoming visible, he thrust the sphere into the ground, creating a massive explosion that evaporated the water around him and dispelled Jozu's water sharks. Koushin then sprinted towards Jozu, his lightning chakra mode leaving a trail of sparks in his wake. Jozu countered with a powerful water blast, Suetun, Hahanryu. The spiraling torrent was aimed directly at Koushin, but the shinobi dodged the attack with an effortless grace. He was in front of Jozu in an instant. Koushin activated his resilience of the Ash Pit Key again, augmenting his strength for the following blow. Taijutsu, Tsuekogiki. His fist landed a solid hit on Jozu, the impact resonating with a bone-jarring force. Jozu staggered back, wincing as he felt the powerful punch even through the Edo Tensei's numbness. But the water user was far from defeated. He gathered his limitless chakra, ready to unleash another assault. However, Koushin was quicker. Jinjutsu, Dominion's Grasp. He locked eyes with Jozu, his dark chakra seeping into the water user's consciousness. Jozu faltered, his next attack dissipating as Koushin's Jinjutsu took hold. Impossible, he muttered, unable to resist the mental onslaught. Nothing is impossible, Koushin replied, a shadow clone appearing beside him. They performed a synchronized set of hand signs. Fuinjutsu, Sealing Art. Golden chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around Jozu and the wind user, binding them in place. The seal glowed with a brilliant light, cutting off their chakra flow and immobilizing them. Koushin wiped the sweat from his brow, a satisfied smile gracing his features. That should keep you two in check. Not so tough without your jutsu, huh? Chapter 112, Jariah vs. Orochimaru. With their strategies in place, the joint teams readied themselves for the imminent fight. Meanwhile, Jariah, the legendary Toad Sage, stepped forward to confront his former teammate, Orochimaru. Jariah, Orochimaru drawled, a twisted grin on his face. It's been a while. Looking forward to catching up? Not particularly, Jariah retorted, his gaze unwavering. I'm more interested in putting an end to your heinous acts. Orochimaru hummed, taking in Jariah's determination. You always were a party pooper, weren't you? Jariah's response was swift. He began forming a series of hand signs, the symbol of his summoning jutsu. Kuchios no jutsu, he declared, slamming his hand onto the ground. In a puff of smoke, the giant toad Gamabunta appeared, ready for battle. You never answered my question, Orochimaru, Jariah called out, his voice echoing across the battlefield. He was atop Gamabunta, the enormous toad towering over the scene. How did you manage to return to life? Orochimaru, standing a distance away, his undead army forming a gruesome backdrop, chuckled, the sound unsettling in the eerie silence. His golden eyes gleamed, a disturbing mirth reflecting in their depths. Wouldn't you like to know, Jariah? He replied, his voice carrying an edge of mockery. Jariah scowled, his grip tightening on the hilt of his sword. He knew Orochimaru would not provide a straight answer, the snake Sannin always enjoyed playing his cards close to his chest. Regardless, Jariah was ready to face him. Meanwhile, the tension between the assembled teams and their opponents was palpable. Anticipation, anxiety, anger, and a multitude of emotions painted their faces as they prepared for battle. The silence was finally broken when Orochimaru, with a wild cackle, launched himself at Jariah. His body shifted and contorted unnaturally, giving him the appearance of a grotesque snake. A surge of nature energy enveloped him, his sage body reacting to his will. The display of power was both fascinating and horrifying. Guess I'll have to beat the answer out of you, then, Jariah muttered, his knuckles whitening around his sword's hilt. He channeled his chakra, feeling the natural energy of the whirlpool inside him. His eyes took on a yellowish tint, with a pigmented red circle around them, a characteristic trait of the sage mode. In response, Orochimaru grinned, his teeth a stark contrast against his pale skin. He flexed his hands, the veins in his arms becoming pronounced. As he tapped into the sage transformation, his skin darkened, becoming rock-like, the power of Yugo's body at his disposal. The two powerful shinobi exploded into action. Summoning jutsu, they called out in unison. Orochimaru summoned his giant snake, Manda, while Jariah summoned his faithful toad warrior, Gamakan. The ground rumbled beneath the weight of these colossal creatures, their roars echoing across the battlefield. Jariah, atop Gamabunta, charged. The giant toad brandished his massive sword, the weapon gleaming menacingly under the dim light. Orochimaru, riding Manda, met his charge head-on. The resulting clash of swords sent a shockwave across the battleground, stirring up a cloud of dust and debris. Manda coiled and twisted, launching Orochimaru into the air. In a flash of hand seals, Orochimaru yelled, "Wind release, great breakthrough!" A violent gust of wind erupted from his mouth, the ferocious gale aiming to knock Jariah off his perch. Anticipating this, Jariah commanded, "Gamabunta, water release, water gun." Gamabunta's mouth opened, unleashing a high-pressured stream of water. The water and wind collided midair, resulting in a colossal mist cloud that engulfed the field. Using the mist as a cover, Orochimaru slithered towards Jariah, his body elongated, giving him the appearance of a massive snake. As he lunged, his golden eyes flashed with malevolent delight, soft physique modification. But Jariah was ready. "Frog kata," he yelled, channeling natural energy into his fists, and as Orochimaru lunged, he struck. His fists impacted Orochimaru's snake-like form, sending ripples of energy that resonated throughout Orochimaru's elongated body. A pained hiss escaped Orochimaru, but he quickly recovered, his body contorting back to his human form. He sneered, "Impressive, Jariah. But how about this? Sage art, inorganic reanimation." In response, the ground beneath Jariah's feet twisted and contorted, rising to bind him. But Jariah's instincts were quicker. "Toad oil bullet," he called out, spewing a stream of oil from his mouth. The oil slicked the contorting ground, causing it to slip and falter. Orochimaru frowned, his annoyance clear. "Cursed seal," he roared, and Yugo's body transformation took over. His body bulked up, and his skin took a darkened tone. His speed and strength dramatically increased, and with a swift rush, he closed in on Jariah. "Brace yourself, Jariah," he called, launching a flurry of punches. Their battle devolved into a fierce exchange of taijutsu, each punch and kick resonating with the sheer force of their chakra and physical prowess. Jariah was not one to back down either. He met Orochimaru's assault with his own, his sage mode empowering each hit. Orochimaru's strikes were relentless, but Jariah managed to parry and dodge most of them, retaliating with his own equally powerful blows. However, amidst the fierce exchange, Orochimaru managed to weave a swift set of hand seals, mumbling, "Five-element seal." With a swift motion, he aimed to strike Jariah's stomach, but the Toad Sage, sensing danger, evaded the attack, creating distance between them. With a broad grin, Orochimaru goaded, "Running away, Jariah?" "Never," Jariah shot back, his gaze stern. "Shadow Clone Jutsu." In a puff of smoke, multiple copies of Jariah appeared on the battlefield, each mirroring his determined expression. Orochimaru hissed, his eyes flickering between the clones. "Interesting," he mused. He darted towards the closest clone, his fist ignited with chakra for another cursed seal attack. The clone met him head-on, ready to parry his strike. But just as Orochimaru was about to connect, the clone poofed, leaving Orochimaru to punch the air. From the mist, the real Jariah charged, his fist pulled back. "Frog strike," he yelled, sending a powerful punch at Orochimaru's flank. The hit landed, and Orochimaru was sent crashing into the ground, creating a small crater on impact. However, Orochimaru swiftly recovered, using his sage transformation to heal his injuries. He glared at Jariah, his golden eyes radiating malicious intent. With a devious grin, he said, "This has been fun, Jariah, but let's end this." He formed a quick string of hand seals, and with a deep inhale, he spat out, striking shadow snakes. Numerous snakes erupted from his mouth, rushing towards Jariah with lethal intent. Jariah, still in sage mode, saw the incoming attack. "Giant Rasengan," he roared, forming a massive swirling ball of chakra in his hand. As the snakes lunged, He drove the giant Rasengan forward, obliterating the snakes and creating a direct path towards Orochimaru. Caught off guard, Orochimaru barely had time to react. The giant Rasengan hit him squarely, sending him hurtling back, his form engulfed by the swirling mass of chakra. The impact resulted in a massive explosion, illuminating the battlefield. As the dust settled, a weary Jariah stood tall, his sage mode dissipating. Chapter 113, End of the Battle. Will last 3 chapters. Their battles ended, the dust clearing and silence ringing in their ears. All teams slowly began to converge on the battlefield center, where Jariah stood over a fallen Orochimaru. They all carried with them the exhaustion and elation of their hard-fought victories. Team Guy approached first, their energy vibrant despite the battle's toll. Neji, Lee, and Tenten followed their teacher, faces flushed from exertion but spirits still soaring high. "Ah, Jariah-sama, I see you have bested your opponent with the fires of your youth." Guy boomed, striking a pose even in his weary state. Jariah chuckled at Guy's antics, his voice raspy. "Your enthusiasm is infectious as always, Guy. And your team has done well." Next to arrive was Team 3, led by Hyuga Iroha. Their faces, while tired, were alight with the success of their first major battle. Sai, Shin, and Yu fell into formation behind their leader, their eyes still wide from the aftermath of their confrontation. "Iroha, your team showed great bravery today," Jariah praised, his gaze on the young team. "We followed your teachings, Jariah-sama," Iroha responded with a respectful bow. "We would not have succeeded otherwise." Team 8 followed, their expression serious, but relief evident in their eyes. Sakura, Kiba, and Shino flanked Kurenai, their bond as a team evident. "Kurenai, your team has outdone themselves," Jariah remarked, meeting Kurenai's proud gaze. "Thank you, Jariah-sama," Kurenai replied. "We did our best." Team 10, led by Asuma, had split into 2 groups during the fight, and each duo was a sight to behold. Chuji, towering over the others, grinned widely, while Shikamaru wore a quiet, satisfied smile. Eno stood proudly beside Shikamaru, her confidence renewed after the intense battle. "Team 10, you all fought bravely," Jariah acknowledged. "Asuma, your training has paid off." Asuma chuckled. "They did all the work. I'm just the guide." Lastly, Team 7 approached. Naruto's infectious energy, Hinata's quiet strength, Koushin's mischievous smile, and Kakashi's steady presence were a testament to their resilience. They had faced 2 formidable Akatsuki members and emerged victorious. "Ah, Naruto, Koushin, Hinata, and of course, Kakashi," Jariah greeted, an affectionate tone to his voice. "Your team fought well. You should be proud." "Thanks, Pervy Sage," Naruto shouted, his grin wide. "We gave it our all." Hinata smiled, her eyes warm. "Thank you, Jariah-sama." Kakashi nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at his team. "Thank you, Jariah. They did well." "Why the fuck you all cheering for?" Koushin asked, with his eyes wide open. They were looking around as if the battle was over, but it was far from that. A slow, steady clapping filled the air, reverberating throughout the quiet battlefield. A chill ran down everyone's spine as the familiar voice of Orochimaru pierced the silence, his words laced with amusement and disdain. "As usual, Koushin-kun, you are the most sensible one." Shock rippled through the ninjas as they turned their gazes to the spot where Orochimaru had fallen, only to find his figure melting away, replaced by an undisturbed, fresh-looking Orochimaru. He perched on top of the railings of a bridge nearby, lazily observing them. A smug, yet bored expression stretched across his face, a perfect mirror to the amused grin worn by Kabuto standing beside him. "You've got to be kidding me," Koushin spat, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the unfazed Orochimaru. His fists clenched at his sides, a clear sign of his irritation. "I swear, Orochimaru-san, your tricks are getting old." Orochimaru simply raised an eyebrow, his amusement seeming to grow. "Is that so, Koushin-kun?" he taunted, leaning forward. And here I thought you'd appreciate a good game. Does it look like I'm laughing? Koushin shot back, his gaze hardening. Naruto, standing beside him, let out a low growl, sharing in his teammates' frustration. Silence swallowed the battlefield. The triumphant energy of mere moments ago was sucked out, replaced by a feeling of dread. They all stood still, their eyes wide with shock at the sight of Orochimaru and Kabuto standing, unharmed and smirking. The disbelieving murmurs and hisses of breath from the teams served as a painful reminder of their miscalculation. Orochimaru's figure at the center of the battlefield had been real. Jariah was certain of it. He had taken extra care to confirm it, his senses and experience affirming the authenticity of Orochimaru's defeat. Others had done the same as they arrived. Sakura with her medical expertise, Shino with his bugs, Neji with his Byakugan, all confirmed it wasn't a clone. Yet, the chilling reality was that they had all been duped. It was a level of deception none had thought Orochimaru capable of. This was a blow, not just to their confidence but also to their trust in their perception. They felt their hearts heavy in their chests. But the most shocked one wasn't Jariah, nor the other ninjas, it was Orochimaru himself. From his perch, he glared down at Koushin, an unreadable expression on his face. A flicker of surprise flashed in his serpentine eyes before he quickly masked it with an amused smirk. He was supposed to be hidden behind an almost imperceptible Jinjutsu, undetectable even to the most skilled of shinobi, yet, somehow Koushin had seen him. Orochimaru chuckled, crossing his arms over his chest. Interesting, he mused aloud, his gaze fixated on Koushin. How did you see through my Jinjutsu, Koushin-kun? Koushin shrugged, an insouciant grin spreading on his face, despite the renewed tension in the air. You know, Orochimaru-san, I've always been told I've got good eyes. Must have something to do with that. He didn't elaborate further, leaving the older shinobi to make of his response what he will. In the heavy silence, Koushin turned to Eno, a playful grin teasing the corners of his mouth. What do you think, Pumpkin-chan? He asked, his eyes gleaming with humor despite the tense situation. Are my eyes beautiful or majestic? Eno blinked at his sudden question, taken aback, then a small laugh bubbled from her throat. The mood in the group, which had been somber a moment before, was slightly lifted by Koushin's easygoing attitude. A low murmur ran through the crowd of ninjas, many of them blinking in surprise at Koushin's seemingly carefree demeanor. Chapter 114, End of the Battle. Part 2. Not too long ago, Koushin had spent nearly 100 perk points on a Jinjutsu immune perk. Being caught in such a simplistic visual Jinjutsu was simply not an option for him. His sensory abilities were naturally high, the perk simply made it impossible for him to fall under the sway of an enemy's Jinjutsu. Thus, despite Orochimaru and Kabuto's careful concealment, Koushin had been able to detect them. He didn't disclose this, but the look in his eyes told a tale of a ninja who was more than what he appeared to be. Orochimaru, seeming to take a moment to digest this, smirked before his eyes slowly shifted. The slit-like pupils first changed into the familiar design of Sharingan, 3 tomos spinning around the iris. Moments later, the Sharingan morphed into the Mangekyo Sharingan. The sight of the powerful eye technique sent a chill through the gathered shinobi. Then, an enormous surge of chakra erupted from Orochimaru, creating a palpable shockwave that sent dust and debris swirling in every direction. His sage body, already intimidating, transformed into a chaotic maelstrom of chakra. The display was a show of raw, untamed power that left the onlookers stunned. The real fight was about to begin. The smirk on Orochimaru's face widened as he let his chakra flood the battlefield, filling the air with an almost tangible sense of dread. It seems our fun is just beginning, he drawled, his Mangekyo Sharingan spinning lazily. The sight sent a shiver of unease down their spines, but none of the gathered shinobi moved, their gazes fixed on Orochimaru. Naruto, get ready, Kakashi said, his voice firm. His student nodded, his knuckles white as he tightened his grip on his kunai. Koushin, however, didn't seem fazed by Orochimaru's power display. He chuckled, tipping his head to the side as he examined the sage. That's one hell of a party trick, Orochimaru-san," he said, his voice filled with a nonchalant humor that belied the serious situation. "Got any more up your sleeves?" Jariah, watching the exchange, sighed heavily. He was well aware of Koushin's irreverent humor, but he never imagined the boy would be so audacious in the face of such a threat. But there was a method to his madness. Koushin's light-hearted banter, his irreverent taunts, were designed to distract and infuriate his opponents, throwing them off balance. Orochimaru scoffed at Koushin's remarks, his eyes flashing dangerously. "You have a death wish, boy," he spat, his tone venomous. Koushin shrugged, unperturbed by the threat. "Just a wish for a good fight, Orochimaru-san," he responded smoothly. With Orochimaru's shocking revelation and the swift display of his powers, the once triumphant atmosphere had turned heavy with dread and anticipation. The respective teams of shinobi quickly moved into defensive formations, their eyes sharp and their spirits steeled for the true fight that lay ahead. Orochimaru gave a low, haunting chuckle, observing the prepared ninjas before him with his newly transformed eyes. Their slit-like pupils, now filled with the hypnotic swirl of the Sharingan, turned into the more complex design of the Mangekyo Sharingan. A palpable surge of chakra radiated from him, causing the very air around him to ripple with energy. His body began to glow, displaying the chaotic maelstrom of his sage transformation. Orochimaru had begun the real battle. "It's time to stop playing around," Orochimaru said, his voice echoing across the battlefield. Koushin, the first to detect Orochimaru's deceit, was ready. His casual demeanor remained despite the circumstances, a testament to his confidence. "Orochimaru-san, you remind me of a snake that sheds its skin." "Always something new with you, isn't it?" he retorted, his voice laced with sarcasm. Orochimaru's lips curled into a smirk at Koushin's jab, his amusement palpable. He extended his hand, and from it, a series of dark, snake-like shadows formed, seamlessly blending with the environment. It was Uwabami Spiral in action, a devastating technique birthed from Orochimaru's Mangekyo Sharingan. Jiraiya's eyes widened at the sight, recognizing the inherent danger in the seemingly harmless shadows. "Everyone, stay alert," he warned. "Those shadows are not what they seem." As if on cue, the shadows lunged towards the shinobi teams with alarming speed. Naruto, ever quick on his feet, managed to dodge them with a swift leap. "Whoa, that's a new one," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and exhilaration. Team 8 didn't fare as well. One of the shadows grazed Kiba, wrapping around him like a snake and binding him. Shino quickly responded, his bugs swarming the shadow and eating away at its chakra. But the damage had been done, Kiba was down, and his teammates were forced to move into a defensive position around him. Over with Team 10, Asuma gritted his teeth. "Focus, everyone. We need to anticipate his moves. Don't let him gain the upper hand." "Got it, Sensei." Eno responded, her eyes steely as she moved into position beside Shikamaru and Chuji. Team Guy was already in motion. Niji activated his Byakugan, scanning the battlefield for the hidden threats. "There are more shadows," he warned. "Stay on guard." Back at the center, Orochimaru was enjoying the disarray. His Sharingan gleamed dangerously as he brought his other hand forward, this time using the Kagami Mirage technique. The battlefield seemed to multiply, an illusion confusing the senses. His image fragmented into many, causing disorientation among the shinobi. Koushin looked unfazed, his eyes studying Orochimaru. He had seen through the Jinjutsu once, and he could do it again. "So, it's a mirage this time, huh?" he mused, maintaining his nonchalant demeanor. The fight against Orochimaru commenced in a sweeping clash of jutsu, a symphony of technique and power that churned up the earth and set the sky alight with shockwaves of chakra. Kabuto watched from the side, his snake-like eyes gleaming with malicious interest. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Orochimaru," Koushin quipped, his eyes glowing with the eerie light of the Twilight Key. Shadows moved around him, bending light and dark to his will, a tangible defiance against Orochimaru's Jinjutsu. "You know, it's rude to start a party without the star of the show." Chapter 115, End of the battle part 3. Koushin surged forward, his lightning chakra mode flaring to life. In one swift motion, he brandished the web weaver key, intricate webs of chakras snaking forth from his fingers. They ensnared Orochimaru's serpentine body, sapping away his strength, and giving Koushin a precious opening. You never learn, do you, Koushin? Orochimaru's voice was dark amusement. He twisted, activating Yugo's sage transformation. His body bulked up, muscle tendrils snapping Koushin's chakra web like spider silk. Before Koushin could react, Orochimaru was upon him, his body fluid manipulation turning his limbs into lethal weapons. But Koushin was quick. A Doton Jutsu erupted, a barrier of earth shielding him from the brunt of the attack. Eno, now! Koushin barked, buying time for his teammate. The girl nodded, her body becoming still as she used the mind transfer, necro-puppeteer. Her consciousness disappeared, leaving her physical form standing defenseless. Koushin gritted his teeth, stepping protectively in front of her as Orochimaru bore down on them. Suddenly, Naruto was there. His clones springing up like a protective wall around them, baring their teeth at Orochimaru. You'll have to get through me first, Snake. Naruto declared, his Rasengan churning with chakra. Necro-manipulation. Shikamaru's voice echoed across the battlefield. The shadows beneath them writhed, latching onto the fallen shinobi around. They rose, their bodies controlled by Shikamaru, adding an unexpected reinforcement to their side. But even as they coordinated their attacks, Orochimaru was far from beaten. His Mangekyo Sharingan glowed in the gloom, the Iwabami spiral lashing out. Dark, snake-like shadows slithered forth, wrapping around the resurrected shinobi, crushing them under an inescapable hold. Koushin's breath hitched. Orochimaru was too strong, his attacks too relentless. But they couldn't lose. Not now. Not ever. He clutched at the Purity's Radiance Key, channeling its power into a bright burst of chakra. The light washed over them, dispelling Orochimaru's shadows and revealing the battlefield. Nice work, Koushin, Kakashi praised, his hand lifting to perform hand seals. Shin, ready? The boy beside him nodded, his hands mirroring Kakashi's movements. Together, they launched the Radiant's calligraphy. Lightning chakra enveloped their blades, cutting through Orochimaru's defense with a bright burst of energy. Choji took the opportunity to charge, his yang release, muscle and bone enhancement bulking up his body. His fist collided with Orochimaru, the sound reverberating through the battlefield. Despite the onslaught, Orochimaru laughed, his form slithering away from the impact and snapping back into focus a safe distance away. My, he murmured, a sinister grin playing on his lips. You've certainly all grown stronger. Now, Sai. Koushin barked. Sai, having already initiated his artistic realm, reality canvas, manipulated the pocket dimension to ensnare Orochimaru, trapping the snake Sannin in an illusion of their design. Sai then used his art to conjure various obstacles and creatures to attack Orochimaru, hoping to confuse and disorient him. From the sidelines, Shino, who had activated insect fusion, chakra symbiosis, sent a swarm of insects toward Orochimaru. The insects, linked to Shino through chakra, enhanced their users' senses, speed, and created chakra-infused webs, further confounding the snake Sannin. Koushin was far from idle, though. His eyes took on an icy sheen as he activated the Dominion's grasp key, aiming to sap Orochimaru's willpower, making him easier to manipulate and control. You're done, Orochimaru. Naruto shouted, joining Koushin at his side. The Leaf's Jinchuriki channeled his Biju's chakra, combining it with his own. The result was an intimidating surge of power that echoed across the battlefield. Orochimaru wasn't easily defeated, however. His serpentine eyes widened, and he slipped out from Sai's pocket dimension, using his extensive knowledge of Jinjutsu to disrupt and exit the manipulated reality. His snakes hissed, lunging out from his sleeves to deflect Shino's insects. Even under the intense force of the Dominion's grasp key, Orochimaru resisted, his will unyielding. You'll have to try harder than that, Koushin. Seeing Orochimaru's retaliation, Koushin's determination did not falter. His gaze hardened as he activated the Hellflame Essence Key, enhancing his fire jutsu to levels previously unattainable. The battlefield lit up in an inferno, the pure, destructive power of the Hellflame bearing down on Orochimaru. The snake Sannin twisted his body, avoiding the scorching flames with uncanny agility. At the same time, he launched a series of swift counterattacks, but his moves were becoming visibly slower, the Dominion's grasp key gradually taking effect. Naruto took the opening, his Rasengan, now with an elemental chakra thanks to Koushin's perk, burning bright. He rushed at Orochimaru, his clones spreading out to cut off the Sannin's escape routes. Despite all their efforts, Orochimaru was still stronger than them. His sage body combined with Mangekyo Sharingan made him a near-invincible adversary. But just as the scales seemed tipped in the Snake Sannin's favor, a devastating war cry tore through the battlefield. With a resounding thud, a fist landed amidst their ranks, scattering shinobi and making the ground tremble. Tsunade, the slug Sannin and the former Hokage, stood beside them, her eyes fierce and determination unwavering. Karen, her red hair standing out starkly against the backdrop of the battle, was at her side. "The party's over, Orochimaru," Tsunade declared, her voice echoing across the battlefield. Her chakra pulsed around her, causing the earth beneath her to crack. "You won't have your way this time." Tsunade charged, her enhanced strength evident as she aimed a punch at Orochimaru. The snake Sannin deftly dodged her attack, his laughter echoing ominously. However, Tsunade's attack was merely a distraction, creating a gap for Karen to use her adamantine sealing chains. Karen's chains, glowing a brilliant hue, sprung from the ground like serpents of their own, racing towards Orochimaru. They wrapped around him before he could react, sealing his movements and trapping him in place. For a moment, confusion flickered across Orochimaru's face. His eyes widened, his smugness replaced with surprise. This was not a sight they were accustomed to. Orochimaru, the insidious and crafty Sannin, was taken aback. "As such power," he murmured, his voice barely a hiss. His gaze shifted to Karen, surprise giving way to a glint of curiosity and intrigue. "Interesting." And then, with a swift motion, Orochimaru whistled. A figure emerged from the shadows, Kabuto, his right-hand man. With a swift motion, Orochimaru flicked a kunai towards Kabuto, breaking him free from Eno's mind transfer jutsu. "Until next time," Orochimaru promised, his serpentine grin returning. Then, with a burst of smoke and a flicker of movement, he and Kabuto were gone, leaving behind a battlefield of exhausted, but determined shinobi. As the smoke cleared, the Konoha shinobi looked around. Despite the retreat of their enemy, their expressions were anything but triumphant. This battle was merely a reminder of the looming threat of Orochimaru and the work they still had ahead. They knew they had won the battle today, but the war was far from over. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 5. Peace.